Hey everybody, and welcome back to another sleep video. Today I wanted to go over some of the most prominent essay content that I've done on players who've experienced steep declines. As I say with all of these compilation style videos, if you hear anything that may sound a little outdated, it's because this is previously released content, though I don't think that affects the overall narrative of what I'm discussing too much. With that being said, I hope you guys all enjoy, and sleep well. Flashback to the end of 2022. Aaron Judge was putting the finishing touches on a record-setting season. The Astros were ramping up to win their first legitimate championship of the last 15 years, and Alek Manoah was completing nearly 200 innings of ace-like baseball that featured an ERA in the low 2s, a whip under 1, and an eventual top 3 Cy Young finish. Now, let's jump to the conclusion of 2025. Judge is still mashing, the Astros are really hurt, and the Husky right-handers team, the Blue Jays, is getting set to make one of the most improbable turnarounds year to year we've seen in a long time, largely on the strength of their former young guys growing into their primes. Vladdy Jr., Bo Bichette, Alejandro Kirk. But one name is missing. Alex. Not only did he not make the postseason roster, he didn't throw even a single regular season inning. So, what the hell happened to Alek Manoah? We'll get there, but first, a brief backstory on his come-up and subsequent breakout. Manoah grew up in Homestead, Florida, standing out as a two-way player at South Dade High School, with a heater that could routinely reach the 90s and impressive exit velos. By his junior year in 2016, scouts were taking notice. He even played in the Under Armour All-America game at Wrigley Field. That's some serious recognition for a high school player. Still, Manoah went undrafted in 2016. He was considered raw as a prospect, and many assumed college would be a great opportunity to develop further. He committed to West Virginia, and immediately impressed. His freshman year in 2017, he made 19 appearances with a 3 ERA, earning Big 12 All-Freshman honors. His sophomore year in 2018 would be the first extended rough patch he probably ever encountered. He struggled with command in 23 contests, only making 8 starts with a 4 ERA and 1.5 whip. His coaches, in response, sent him to the Cape Cod League that summer to reset and work on his issues. It turned out that his stint with Chatham was exactly what Manoah needed. After dominating there, Alek came back for his junior year in 2019 looking like a completely different pitcher. Everything clicked. His fastball climbed more routinely into the mid-90s. His slider became a true A-plus weapon. And perhaps, most importantly, he found the strike zone with consistency. He earned Big 12 Pitcher of the Year honors with a 2.66 ERA and 12 strikeouts per 9, racking up 144 punch-outs in 108 frames. This all came with a whip under 1. The Blue Jays were impressed enough to select Manoah 11th overall in the 2019 draft, giving him first-round money and subsequent first-round expectations. After going undrafted 3 seasons earlier, Alek had become a top prospect. Many prospects, even out of college, take years to reach the big leagues and achieve any real measure of success thereafter. Manoah took 2 seasons. He dominated in his brief pro debut after getting drafted in 2019. Then 2020 hit, and the minor league season got canceled due to COVID. Like a lot of prospects, Manoah spent that year at an alternate site working on his craft. And immediately, once baseball returned fully in 2021, this work paid off in a big way. Despite throwing just 17 innings in his professional career to that point, he started the year with AAA Buffalo and proceeded to dominate like I'm sure few expected. In 3 starts, he pitched 18 innings, striking out 27 batters, walking just 3, and giving up a single earned run. Hold on for 1 second. I want to ask you a question. Would you like a chance to win 2 free tickets to your MLB team's opening day next year? That's right. Today's sponsor, Rico, is giving away 2 tickets worth up to $250 to your MLB team's first game in 2025. Now, what is Rico? Well, have you ever found yourself watching a YouTube video and thought, where can I get that tech or fashion or gadget? That's where Rico comes in. It's a new app that makes videos instantly shoppable. You can tap products directly inside videos and see where to get them. No more searching, no more looking, just instantaneous access. As for the giveaway, all you need to do is download the app via my link in either the pinned comment or description. The winner will then be announced on the 1st of December. Thanks again to Rico for sponsoring this video, and good luck to everybody that downloads. The Blue Jays couldn't ignore what they were seeing. The guy was ready for the big leagues. On May 27th, 2021, Toronto called him up and threw him right into the fire. With his debut coming against the Yankees' max pressure, Manoah didn't just survive. He dominated. 7 strikeouts, 2 hits allowed, and just 2 walks. It was the kind of debut that immediately gets people talking about a pitcher. But that wasn't a fluke performance. Manoah kept dealing throughout his rookie season. On July 2nd, he set a Blue Jays record by striking out 7 straight batters against Tampa Bay. 7 straight. That made him just the 4th pitcher since 1974 to strike out 7 consecutive batters within his first 7 career starts. His 2 fastball variations, being a 4-seamer and sinker, were sitting routinely in the 93 to 95 range, generating consistent weak contact, but it was his slider that really stood out metrically. A sub-150 batting average against, near 40% whiff rate, and just 8 extra base hits given up against it. He also showcased a mediocre changeup, but not very prominently. Beyond even the impressive stuff, Manoah displayed remarkable poise for a rookie. He never seemed rattled, even when facing the heart of opposing lineups in high-leverage situations. Alek finished his rookie year with a 9-2 record, 3.22 ERA, and 127 Ks in 111 innings. For a guy who was starting his first ever full professional season, those numbers were incredible, but they were indeed only the prelude to what would be one of the greatest sophomore follow-ups possible. If 2021 was Manoah's introduction to the big leagues, 2022 was his coming out party as one of baseball's premier arms. From the very first start, he looked different. The power stuff was still there, but much more refined. By year's end, his walk rate had dropped from 3.2 to 2.3. By limiting his middle zone mistakes, he also cut his already low home run rate by 30% and gave up just 6.6 hits per 9. All of his numbers improved across the board, aside from strikeout rate. At this point, the hefty righty tipped the scales at 285 pounds, 25 pounds heavier than his draft weight. Still, at 6'6", this wasn't crazy or anything. He was agile enough to execute his delivery with consistency and strong enough to maintain his stuff deep into games. And rest assured, I'll get to why this is important in a bit. Manoah was throwing his slider on any count, locating his fastball on both sides of the plate, and mixing in his changeup, which at this point had become more of a prominent pitch for him, with effectiveness. Then came the All-Star game in Los Angeles. Manoah took the mound in the 4th inning and faced 3 batters. He struck them all out. The full season numbers were spectacular. A 16-7 record, a 2.24 ERA, 196 2/3 innings pitched with 180 strikeouts, and a whip under 1. He made 31 starts, never missing a turn. At this point, the entire league was paying close attention. When the season ended, he finished 3rd in AL Cy Young voting, behind just Justin Verlander and Dylan Cease. Mind you, once again, this was his sophomore season. He still was just 24 years old. People were calling him a righty CC Sabathia with that huge frame and bulldog mentality on the mound, naming him as a franchise cornerstone who could anchor Toronto's rotation for much of the next decade. But that offseason, something changed, and in a, pardon the pun, big way. Between the end of 2022 and spring training of 2023, Manoah gained an estimated 40 to 50 pounds. He showed up to camp noticeably heavier, somewhere in the 325 to 335 pound range according to observers. That was around 75 pounds above his draft weight. The conditioning controversy exploded on February 1st, 2023, when MLB Network analyst Anthony Recker criticized Manoah on air. "Just show me you're willing to put in a little more time in the gym," Recker said. Manoah fired back on Twitter the next day with a defensive response. "What I do in the gym has clearly worked." Perhaps prior to 2023, but that statement wouldn't age well into the new season. At first, there were small warning signs. Manoah's command wasn't as sharp. His velocity seemed to fluctuate from start to start, dipping into the low 90s at times. Pitch clock rules forced him to work a little bit faster, throwing off a rhythm that generally operated at a pace a bit slower than most, and further exposed potential conditioning problems. At times, it didn't seem like he could fully catch his breath between pitches. By the end of May, his ERA sat in the mid-5s. Then came the breaking point. June 4th, 2023, against the Houston Astros, Manoah took the mound and immediately looked lost. By the time he was done, he'd recorded exactly 1 out while giving up 6 runs. Manager John Schneider slowly walked to the mound, and Manoah handed him the ball and walked off, head down. The next day, the Blue Jays made a decision that would shock the entire baseball world. They demoted Manoah all the way down to the Florida Complex League. That's rookie ball. A pitcher who had finished 3rd in Cy Young voting less than a year earlier had gotten sent to play with 18-year-old kids fresh out of high school. Schneider tried to explain. He's upset because the competitor that he is. Everything is on the table. Translation, they were lost for answers as to how to fix this. In his one appearance when he was down there, he gave up 11 runs in 2 2/3 innings. He would return to MLB for 6 more starts between July and August, giving up 16 runs in 29 frames. This was the lowest of the low. The reset hadn't done anything significant to address his struggles. Then came another controversy. After another rough start on August 10th, the Blue Jays optioned Manoah back to AAA Buffalo for another attempt at tinkering. But reports quickly surfaced that Alek didn't initially report to the minor league team. Instead, he sought out second medical opinions about the arm soreness he had been battling for a while. This created a firestorm in the media. Some coverage framed it as Manoah being difficult. Others suggested the Blue Jays weren't taking his health seriously enough. The always controversial Ken Rosenthal later reported that the organization, quote, did not like what they were seeing from Manoah. His velo was down and his body wasn't great. Regardless of who felt what, he wouldn't make another start in 2023, ending his year with a 5.87 ERA, 1.7 whip, and an abysmal 1.34 strikeout to walk ratio. During the 2023 to 2024 offseason, Manoah made another dramatic transformation. He lost approximately 30 pounds. Beat reporters noted he looked trimmed down at spring training. Teammate Kevin Gossman said that Alek arrived with a much better mental state. After some time spent rehabbing another small injury to begin the year, he officially made his way back to the big club in May, and had a number of decent outings. His fastball looked relatively lively again. His slider was getting swings and misses. For the first time in a couple seasons, Manoah looked like the pitcher everyone remembered, en route to post an ERA under 4. But then, in June, disaster struck in another catastrophic way. This time, it was in the form of Tommy John surgery. The operation put an end to his 2024 season before it ever really got going. After TJ, most pitchers take at least a year to get back on the mound. And the same was true of Alek. He spent all the way up until early 2025 rehabbing. By March of that year, he was able to finally throw bullpen sessions again. Then, on July 14th, over a year after his surgery, Manoah finally took the mound in a real game for the first time. It didn't go well. In the Florida Complex League, once again at basically the rookie ball level, he got shelled to the tune of giving up 4 runs with 2 walks and hitting a batter while recording just 1 out. It wasn't pretty. Through July and August, he worked his way through more rehab starts at AA and AAA. Along the way, it was notable that his velocity was down, sitting around 90 miles per hour instead of the 94 to 96 he'd shown at his peak. Still, through 7 starts at AAA Buffalo, he posted a 2.97 ERA. That looked good on paper, but underneath, the problems were obvious. He walked 18 batters in those starts while giving up 6 homers. His whip was near 1.4. The Blue Jays saw the writing on the wall. He would never get another chance to pitch in Toronto. On September 23, 2025, they needed to activate outfielder Anthony Santander, requiring them to free up a spot on their 40-man roster. They had to cut someone. They chose Alek. After he became a potential waiver wire pickup, teams started passing one after another. The Rockies said no thank you, even though they had a 6.02 team ERA and desperately needed pitching. The White Sox did the same. So did the Nationals, the Twins, Pirates, and Angels all said no. Nobody wanted to touch the former Cy Young finalist, who was now throwing 90-mile-per-hour fastballs with no command. 3 days later, it was the Atlanta Braves that claimed Manoah off waivers. For Alek, it was a lifeline. The Braves immediately optioned him to their spring training complex in Florida. They'll probably spend the offseason trying to rebuild him from the ground up. A massive overhaul to his mechanics, a new conditioning program, a new mental approach. Each of these being something that no one could have predicted he'd need just a few years ago. So, how does a pitcher go from Cy Young finalist to getting cut in just 3 years? Well, there were 3 major reasons. The weight gain more than likely threw off his mechanics a bit. His decreasing athleticism seemed to not only impede his elasticity on the mound, but also his ability to get into power positions, resulting in a poor command and diminishing velocity. Former big league pitcher Dan Plesac directly noted that Manoah was commonly flying open with his front shoulder. Number 2, his notably poor injury luck besides this. The Tommy John surgery in 2024 suggests Manoah's arm soreness in the prior year might have negatively affected his performance as well. Elbow injuries don't happen overnight after all. They develop over time. Maybe the extra weight put more stress on his arm. Maybe compensating for bad mechanics caused the injury. Regardless, it was another unfortunate factor. And number 3, with this more than likely being the smallest affectation, was the implementation of the pitch clock. Not only did it require him to reach a level of cardio performance that was always going to be difficult for him, but it also simply discombobulated his slow internal clock. At 27, Manoah is still young enough to be able to turn things around. The pressure is certainly mounting. And even though Alek himself once said that, quote, pressure is what you put in your tires, it's undoubtedly got a way on him how quickly everything fell apart. As, for now, his career serves as one of the weirdest examples of a guy going from downright elite to unplayable in the span of only a single season, and then not managing to achieve even a semblance of the same success afterwards. Alright everybody, if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching, and if you did, consider checking out any of these other videos on your screen right now for other content just like this. Also, if you ever see anything you'd like to see me detail in the video, feel free to reach out to my email, basebpoet@gmail.com, and if I end up using your idea, I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. What happens when a franchise savior becomes one of your team's biggest question marks? Orioles fans are living that nightmare right now with Adley Rutschman. Here's how a mysterious statistical falloff and 2 major injuries turned baseball's best young catcher into a near sub-replacement level player, fighting for his starting job. Adley Rutschman grew up in Portland, Oregon, with baseball in his DNA. His grandfather, Ad Rutschman, coached at Linfield College and won 3 national titles in football and another in baseball. His dad, Randy, played college baseball as a catcher at the same school. At Sherwood High School in Oregon, Rutschman was good, but never attracted major attention. The Seattle Mariners took a flyer on him in the 40th round of the 2016 draft, a round that no longer exists today. But with zero guarantee for a prospect pedigree, Rutschman said no thanks. Oregon State assistant coach Nate Bailey had been tracking Adley since he was 5 years old. Bailey coached with his dad at George Fox University and knew the family well. When it came time to recruit the young player, Bailey went all in. He later joked that he told the parents if Adley didn't commit within 2 weeks, he'd burn their house down. They laughed. Bailey said he wasn't joking. Rutschman did indeed commit to Oregon State. Within the next couple of years, everything would change. His freshman year in 2018, he played in 61 games and hit just .234 with 2 homers. Nothing crazy. But the kid had an unbelievable eye at the plate. He walked 27 times, helping him to post a respectable .322 OBP. Oh yeah, and he was also kicking for the Oregon State football team that fall. He averaged 59.5 yards per kickoff with 20 touchbacks in 12 games. His sophomore year would see him break out to new heights on the diamond. He nearly doubled his previous year's average at .408, along with a .505 on base percentage. 9 bombs, 83 RBIs. He set an Oregon State record with 102 hits. And his team ended up winning the 2018 College World Series. Rutschman was named the most outstanding player. He set a College World Series record with 17 hits and drove in 13 runs. Yet somehow his junior year in 2019 was even better. Adley hit .411 this time, with 17 homers and 58 RBIs. He led all of college baseball with 76 walks in just 57 games. That year, he won everything. The Golden Spikes Award, Dick Hauser Trophy, Buster Posey Award, Pac-12 Player of the Year. But here's the moment that shows you how truly feared he was. During the 2019 NCAA tournament, an opposing team intentionally walked him. With the bases loaded, they literally gave up a free run just to not let him take the chance of swinging the bat. Barry Bonds treatment. The Baltimore Orioles took him first overall in that year's draft. He became Oregon State's first ever #1 pick, and the first catcher taken that high since Joe Mauer in 2001. And what's more, no one was the least bit surprised. Baltimore, seemingly, had found their franchise cornerstone. Adley crushed it in his short pro debut after the draft, putting up a near 900 OPS in Single A. Then COVID shut down the 2020 minor league season. He, like everyone else that year, spent what would have been a season at the alternate site. He was sent to Double-A Bowie to begin 2021, and proceeded to destroy minor league pitching. In 80 games, he hit .271 with a .392 on base percentage and .508 slugging, 18 bombs, 55 RBIs. The kid was unstoppable. August came and they bumped him up to Triple-A Norfolk, where he hit .312 in 43 games with 5 more homers. Really? There was nothing left for him to learn down there. And so he was seemingly set to make the 2022 opening day roster, but unfortunately a tricep strain kept him out. He started a rehab assignment in late April, and on May 21st, 2022, Baltimore officially called him up. He debuted that same day against Tampa Bay at Camden Yards. In his first game, he went 1 for 3 with a walk, and his first extra base hit, a triple. On June 15th, he went deep off Toronto's Jose Barrios for his first ever big league homer. From here, he wouldn't really slow down. His rookie year ended with a .254 average, .362 on base percentage, and .445 slugging, 13 homers, 42 RBIs, 35 doubles in 113 games, and a .131 OPS plus and 5.4 BWAR. He finished second in Rookie of the Year voting behind Julio Rodriguez. The Baltimore media voted him Most Valuable Oriole. He was a bona fide star in the making, becoming everything that had been expected of him. If 2022 had introduced Adley to the league, 2023 was his breakthrough. On opening day, he went 5 for 5 with the homer, becoming the first player since 1937 to do so. Through June, he was hitting .273 with .376 on base percentage and .423 slugging. By the All-Star break, he had 12 homers and made his first ever Fall Classic team as a starter. He also managed to participate in the Home Run Derby. In round 1, he crushed 27 bombs before losing to Luis Robert Jr. in a tiebreaker. The whole world got to see his power, and from both sides of the plate. The full 2023 season numbers? Simply stunning. A .277, .374, .435 slash with 20 homers, 80 RBIs, and a ridiculous 154 games played. He even led All-American League catchers with 92 walks. He won his first Silver Slugger Award and made the All-MLB first team at catcher. At 25 years old, people were calling him the best all-around catcher in baseball. His team benefited greatly, making the playoffs for the first time since 2016. Sure, it didn't go how they wanted, getting swept by the Rangers in the ALDS, but still, they had gotten much better than in recent years, with Adley, Gunnar Henderson, Grayson Rodriguez, and a host of other young emerging talent. It seemed like Baltimore was in the process of erecting a dynasty, but for both Rutschman and the Orioles overall, this level of success would be relatively short-lived. 2024 started perfectly. Through 3 months, Rutschman was hitting .294, .350, .471 with 15 homers and 55 RBIs. He made his second straight All-Star team and got voted in as the starting catcher for the American League for the second straight season. At the time, it seemed like nothing could stop him. Then, late June happened. Something changed. There wasn't one specific play you can point to, but after June 27th against Texas at Camden Yards, the switch just flipped. Rutschman went from MVP candidate to looking completely lost. Some people think he took a real beating behind the plate in the weeks before. Others pointed to him getting hit by pitches earlier in the month. Maybe his hand was banged up. Perhaps something else. But he never did go on the injured list. He just kept playing through whatever it was. And the numbers fell off a cliff. From June 28th on, Rutschman turned into a completely different player, His last 58 games saw him bat just .207 with a .585 OPS and 3 homers. By year's end, every major stat possible had seen a significant decline from the previous year, and by a wide margin. The wildcard series against Kansas City that October wouldn't bring any change to this narrative. He went just 1 for 8. The Orioles scored 1 run in 2 games and got swept, the second straight year they'd gotten bounced without winning a playoff game. Manager Brandon Hyde got sick of answering questions about Adley's sudden drop-off in production. "I've answered this question a million times," he said after they got eliminated. "I think it's a young player who's dealing with some adversity." GM Mike Elias tried to stay calm. "He's been such a key to our ascent that it's been very frustrating for him, and for us, to see him experience the degree of struggles that he did in the second half, really for the first time since we've had him. But he is an elite competitor, an athlete, and he's our guy." When reporters asked the catcher straight up if he was hurt, he seemingly dodged it. "What I would say is, there are a lot of tiny things that can contribute to you being off just a little bit," he said. He got scratched 1 game in August with back soreness, but was back the next day. In the 3 years since he'd gotten called up with Baltimore, he'd never once officially hit the injured list. The mystery of what happened in late June 2024 has thus far not been solved, but whatever it was, it didn't go away the following year. Adley came to 2025 fired up. "I didn't have to look very hard to find motivation this offseason," he told reporters in spring training. "You're just pissed off for months." He changed his swing a little, starting with his hands further back, along with a smaller leg kick. Tiny adjustments to give him more time on pitches. But it didn't seem to matter. Through his first 37 games, he hit .203 with a .636 OPS, dead last among everyday starting catchers. But it wasn't just the raw numbers that were concerning. His hard hit rate was dropping, his chase rate rising, and all of his expected totals took a subsequent nosedive. Then, his body started breaking down. On May 25th, a foul tip drilled his mask at Fenway Park. He stayed in to catch the 4th, but got pulled in the 5th. A few days later, he was back out there. On June 20th, he got scratched before a Yankees game with left side soreness. A subsequent MRI revealed a left oblique strain. For the first time in his career, he hit the IL. He would proceed to miss the next 5 weeks, but even after coming back, he looked off. In his next 17 games after his return, he hit .227 with just a single homer. Then, in late August, he felt something else during batting practice. 2 days later, he was back on the IL, this time with a right oblique strain. Interim manager Tony Mansolino tried to sound hopeful. "My understanding is that it's low grade. It's very mild," he said. Knowing Adley, he's going to do everything he can to get back and play at some point this year. The season was already effectively over for his squad, with the Birds sitting at 59 and 67, last place in a competitive AL East. They'd put 27 guys on the IL at that point. Rutschman was one of 5 with multiple trips. He did indeed come back before the season ended, in late September. By then, Samuel Basallo was the starting catcher. As Rutschman sat on the IL in August, Baltimore called up their top catching prospect, Basallo, who at 21 years old had just murdered AAA. In 76 games, he hit .270 with a .377 on base percentage and .589 slug, crushing 23 bombs. He would debut on August 17th, tallying a 2-run single for his first hit. In his 4th contest, he drove in the game winner in the 11th against Boston. 5 days later, the Orioles signed Basallo to an 8-year, $67 million extension. GM Elias tried to play it cool. "From my point of view, the more the merrier when it comes to good players," he said. "We've got a lot of guys here, Samuel included, who are really good athletes that can play multiple positions." Nonetheless, people started talking right away. USA Today's Bob Nightingale wrote that Rutschman would be perhaps the biggest position player on the trade block this winter, and predicted that he'd be wearing another uniform come spring training. It wasn't hard to see why. By year's end, Adley's 2023 seemed like a distant memory. A .220, .307, .366 slash, yielding his first ever sub-league average OPS plus at 90. He failed to crack 30 total extra base hits. His defense declined from elite to simply above average. Just a nightmare season all around. So, how does a guy go from face of the franchise to a question mark in just 2 years? Something happened in late June 2024. That's when it started. Rutschman fell apart right after. To this day, nobody knows exactly what, because, again, he never went on the IL. Then the oblique strains in 2025 made it worse. Your obliques are the muscles on your sides. When you swing, they help you rotate. Strain one, and your whole stance breaks down. Rutschman strained his left side, came back, then strained his right. What does that do to a swing? At this point, it had become clear that he was pressing mentally as well, seeing his chase rate balloon and his walk rate drop. Elias said at one point that Rutschman was naturally tired from catching as well. This makes sense. In 2023 alone, he played in 154 games, 110 of them coming behind the plate. The Athletics' Eno Saris tried to find something good among the rubble. The way I'm thinking about Adley at this point is sometimes we focus too hard on what players can't do. You have to remember, he's a switch-hitting catcher who's actually decent at the plate, even if he's not a star. He's also a good receiver and framer. 2 years ago, people were comparing him to Joe Mauer and Buster Posey. Now the best angle we seem to be able to take is that he's decent at the plate and can still catch. Something about that feels tragic, doesn't it? The projections still think he bounces back. Zips says 270 with 17 homers in 2026. Steamer says 261 with 20. Perhaps that's why his name keeps coming up in trade talks. Multiple insiders besides Nightingale have put his name out there this winter. The idea is Baltimore could sell now while he's still got 2 years left and get some semblance of value in return. The best case if he doesn't get moved, he gets healthy this winter and finds a swing again. Him and Bassiah would probably split time at catcher, DH, and first base when new signing Pete Alonso needs a day off. Worst case, this is who he is now. He becomes a defense-first guy who hits 240 with middling power. At that point, trading him could be tough, at least for anything of note. The true crazy part here is how fast everything happened. From his debut in 2022 to June 2024, Adley was among the best players in the sport. Since then, he's been nothing short of barely replacement level. At this point, all we can do as general baseball fans is hope for some kind of return to form, lest he go down as having one of the more tragic fall-offs in recent MLB history.
Baseball history is littered with spectacular flameouts and broken dreams. Some pitchers fade gradually into obscurity, others crash and burn overnight. But perhaps no young, powerful arm has ever fallen apart as completely as Bobby Miller. The towering right-hander appeared destined for stardom after his dominant 2023 rookie campaign with the Los Angeles Dodgers, during which he posted a solid 3.76 ERA with 119 strikeouts and 124 innings across 22 starts, with, at times, 4+ pitches. Yet, by the end of 2024, Miller had transformed from future ace to league-worst starter with a terrible 8.52 ERA. In 2025, that's when the Dodgers were forced to make a decision that would have been unthinkable during Miller's rookie year. Rock bottom had been hit. But what led us here? Bobby grew up in McHenry, Illinois, as a huge prospect, eventually reaching 6'5" by his senior year. At McHenry West Campus High School, he posted a 5-2 record with a 1.98 ERA and 76 strikeouts in 55 innings as a junior. His senior year was even more dominant, as he pitched to a microscopic 0.80 ERA, this time punching out 96 hitters while walking just 6 in 52 innings. The Baltimore Orioles took notice, selecting him in the 38th round of the 2017 draft. But Miller had bigger plans, deciding to opt for college instead. It wasn't just the stats that had caught scouts' attention. Miller had something he can't teach, a smooth delivery that allowed him to not only throw triple digits, but to make it look easy. At the University of Louisville, Miller's path continued upward. As a freshman in 2018, he immediately made an impact with a 6-1 record and 2.97 ERA over 17 games, earning freshman All-American honors and spots on the American Athletic Conference third team and all-freshman team. That summer, he played for the prestigious Brewster Whitecaps in the Cape Cod Baseball League, a proving ground for future major leaguers. In his sophomore year, Miller went 7-1 with a 3.83 ERA. Then that summer brought him even greater recognition when he was selected for USA Baseball's top college team, one of the most elite groups in amateur baseball. Miller's junior season in 2020 was cut short by COVID-19, but not before he went 2-0 with a 2.31 ERA over 4 starts, striking out 34 batters in just over 23 innings. The Dodgers had seen enough to select Miller 29th overall in the 2020 MLB draft. This time, he was ready to turn pro, with even more polished pitchability. In the minor leagues, Miller moved through the system like a man among boys. By 2022, scouts were running out of good things to say. He was ranked as a top 25 prospect in all of baseball entering 2023. He was also the top pitching prospect in the Dodgers system. Now that's saying something for a team known for developing great pitchers. Scouts loved his 4-pitch mix. His fastball hit the upper 90s consistently and could still touch 100 when he needed it to go along with the sharp slider, fading changeup, and diving curveball, all of which flashed plus at times. But what really caught everyone's attention was how easy it all looked. Even when Miller was throwing 98 miles per hour, his delivery looked smooth and repeatable. There was no violence, no red flags that came with his raw mechanics. The Dodgers viewed him as a cornerstone piece for their future rotation, and they had every reason to believe so. Miller exploded onto the scene on May 23, 2023, immediately establishing himself among baseball's elite young arms with his debut against the Atlanta Braves. He pitched 5 innings of 1-run ball, striking out 5 and earning the win in an 8-1 Dodgers victory. But again, numbers don't do justice to just how dominant he looked. His very first pitch in the majors clocked over 100 miles per hour, and 9 of his first 19 pitches hit triple digits. The Braves lineup, one of the most feared in baseball, looked completely overmatched. After allowing a run in the first inning, the young right-hander had also made small but important adjustments by mixing in his secondary pitches more, and that was all she wrote for Atlanta. Dodgers manager Dave Roberts heaped understandable praise on him after that debut. He was really impressive. He showed a lot of poise, noting how Miller managed his emotions while maintaining a decided edge. Even the opposing manager, Brian Snitker, took notice. An arm like Bobby Miller's is what it takes. Good stuff, and we just couldn't get a hold of him. That's a good-looking young pitcher right there. He's got a really bright future. That strong debut was no fluke. Miller went on to have a very solid rookie campaign, becoming a fixture on a Dodgers team that was postseason bound, seemingly from opening day. But it wasn't just his rock-solid consistency that impressed. It was how Miller seemed to rise to big moments. Against San Diego in August, Miller pitched 6 scoreless innings in a crucial divisional matchup. His overall season included an 11-4 record, with that 3.76 ERA and nearly 9 Ks per 9 across 22 starts. That record also made him the first American-born Dodger rookie starter with double-digit wins since Tim Belcher in 1988. But perhaps most importantly, Miller was beginning to understand which pitches made him most effective. By September 2023, he was confident about the order of his offerings, noting that while his slider and changeup had potential to be dominant, his curveball had become his best secondary offering at the time. It's hard to argue with my curveball being my best pitch, Miller said that fall while being asked about his development. Everyone who watched even a cursory amount of MLB seemed to predict Miller as a future rotation anchor. The expectations weren't just high, they were through the roof, and that's when the pressure really began to mount. If 2023 was Miller's rise to stardom, 2024 became what one beat writer called the sophomore slump to end all sophomore slumps. But here's the truly bizarre part. He actually started 2024 even better than the season before. In the Dodgers' second game of the year, Miller took the mound against St. Louis and was absolutely electric. 6 innings, no runs, with 11 strikeouts. He was hitting 100 miles per hour consistently, his slider was untouchable, and Cardinals hitters looked downright helpless. That performance, justifiably, had baseball people talking about Miller as a potential Cy Young candidate. The stuff was just that good, and the command was that precise. Everything that made him successful as a rookie seemed to be amplified. For one glorious afternoon, everything had come together in a way it never had before. Unfortunately, that would be his last good start of the season. In his very next appearance at Wrigley in early April, the wheels completely fell off. He couldn't escape the second inning, needing 58 pitches to record just 4 outs while surrendering 5 runs to the Cubs. His fastball command was gone, his breaking stuff was hanging over the plate, and Cubs hitters were making him look like a batting practice pitcher. Something was clearly wrong, and Miller struggled again in his next start against the Twins. Shortly thereafter, the Dodgers placed him on the injured list with right shoulder inflammation. That issue sidelined him for about 10 weeks, a lengthy absence that interrupted any chance of rediscovering his early season rhythm. But here's where things get really depressing. During his rehab stint in the minors, Miller was getting absolutely shelled. Over 4 rehab starts split between Single-A and Triple-A, he posted a 7.80 ERA in 15 innings. Even more alarming, he walked 8 batters while only striking out 10. Manager Dave Roberts tried to stay optimistic at the time, downplaying the ugly rehab numbers and suggesting Miller would refocus once he got back in a big league environment. Unfortunately, the troubles only deepened upon his return. When Miller came back in June 2024, any hopes of a quick turnaround were destroyed immediately. His first start back came at Coors Field in Denver, which, in retrospect, was a bit of a head-scratcher of a decision. 5 runs allowed in 6 innings. His next outing? Far worse. Facing the struggling White Sox, a team that was on pace for the worst season in modern baseball history, Miller couldn't make it out of the second inning. He labored through 60 pitches while getting knocked around by hitters who were struggling against everyone else in baseball. If you couldn't get 2024 White Sox hitters out, you had serious problems, and Miller did indeed have those in bunches. Outings like these became, sadly, quite routine. He would start games, get into immediate trouble, labor through every frame, and then get pulled after 3 or 4 innings max. The Dodgers kept hoping he'd find his rookie form, but it never came. The absolute rock bottom arrived on July 8th, 2024, against Philadelphia. Miller was rocked for 9 earned runs in only 4 innings. 9 runs in 4 innings. You can't get much worse than that. Here's how bad Miller had become. Batters were hitting over 300 and slugging .571 against him. That's borderline MVP level numbers. Basically, versus his pitches, every hitter was Yordan Alvarez. His fastball, once his calling card, became a downright liability. In 2023, opponents hit .258 and slugged .367 off of Miller's fastball. Basically league average production. And that's not counting how well it set up his breaking stuff. In 2024, opponents hit a whopping .327 and slugged .634 off the heater. And it's not like any of his off-speed pitches were doing much better either. Here's how bad it got. Among all MLB pitchers who threw at least 50 innings in 2024, Miller had the league's worst ERA at .852, and its worst FIP at .697. He wasn't just bad, he was statistically the worst pitcher in baseball. His numbers were so poor that he actually cost his team nearly 2 wins as compared to a replacement-level pitcher you could grab from AAA, per B-WAR, a swing of nearly 4 from his first-year mark of 2.0. Finally, the Dodgers had enough. In mid-July, despite desperately needing pitching, they optioned Miller back to AAA to let him regroup and work on his issues. There would be a couple of brief flashes. He even managed one decent outing against Baltimore in late August. But more often than not, every time the Dodgers gave him another chance, Miller faltered. The final straw came in September against Miami, With the team trying to secure a playoff spot, Bobby was given one last chance to redeem himself against the lowly Marlins. He lasted just 2 innings, giving up 4 runs on 7 hits while laboring through 65 pitches to record 6 outs. The Marlins were one of the worst offensive teams in baseball, but they crushed Bobby like he was a position player throwing in a 12-2 game. The next day, September 18th, 2024, the Dodgers sent Miller back to AAA for good, effectively shutting him down for the rest of the season. They didn't even consider him for their postseason roster, opting instead for bullpen games rather than risking another Miller start, and it worked, en route to a World Series ring. A ring that probably felt a bit hollow for a player that actively hurt his team's chances of winning it. Hoping that 2024 was just a nightmare fluke prompted largely by injuries, both the Dodgers and Bobby looked at 2025 as a fresh start. Sadly, this wasn't to be. Miller didn't break camp in the starting rotation, but when the Dodgers needed arms early on due to injuries, they called him up for a spot start. On April 16th, a little over 1 year after his dominant 11-strikeout gem against St. Louis, he took them out against Colorado. This time, it was in Dodger Stadium. The results were sickeningly familiar. 3 innings pitched and 6 runs given up, including a 5-run third inning capped off with a grand slam on a hanging curveball. Though Miller struck out 7 batters with his undeniably powerful raw stuff, it didn't matter. Once again, he couldn't stop innings from spiraling out of hand. He was pulled after having blown the 7-1 lead the Dodgers offense had given him, against the worst team in baseball. Though LA went on to win 8-7, the righty himself admitted after the game that he too was disappointed in his performance, looking dejected while answering questions and saying, quote, "I know I'm a lot better than what I showed today. This would be Bobby's only start in 2025. He made one other brief MLB appearance in relief, but the results weren't much better. In total this season, he appeared in just 2 games, pitching 5 innings and giving up 7 earned runs. That's a 12.60 ERA. But even these small sample size struggles weren't as concerning as what he was doing down in AAA, which is to say, struggling badly again. He posted a 5.58 ERA with a bloated 1.64 whip in 69 innings. He struck out just 57 batters while walking 49. Sure, the run environment is high down there, but not enough to make up for these kind of results. A nearly 1-to-1 strikeout to walk ratio? That's downright ludicrous at any level. By midsummer 2025, the Dodgers made a decision that would have been unthinkable 2 years prior. They announced Miller was going to be converted to a relief pitcher. Dave Roberts explained the thinking behind the move. "I think that this might be something that unlocks him. Going hard for a shorter period of time to get some confidence for him, which could help us here." The team that once viewed him as a future ace had all but given up on him as a starter, at least for the time being, but they weren't giving up on his talent yet. So, how does a pitcher go from future Cy Young candidate to the worst in baseball? And in just 1 year. Everyone's been trying to figure this out, obviously, but I do think there are some key factors. The shoulder injury that sidelined Miller in early 2024 was the start, but what happened next was the real disaster. To protect his arm, the Dodgers tried to make some mechanical tweaks when he returned. They moved his position on the pitching rubber. They altered parts of his delivery to reduce stress on his shoulder, and it seemingly blew up in their faces. Bobby had pretty much zero command with his new mechanics. Miller's fastball in 2024 was either wildly missing the strike zone or catching far too much of the plate. The raw velocity was still there, sure. He continued to average near 98 miles per hour and could still touch 100, but without anything approximating decent control. MLB hitters began teeing off on the pitch. Miller's walk rate spiked to over 5 per 9 innings because he frequently fell behind in counts, which not only gave birth to all those free passes, but many times also resulted in him having to groove heaters later, which partially explains why his fastball numbers were so bad. Dave Roberts said that Miller needed to, quote, learn how to handle hitters and innings to go deeper into games, but that's never quite happened. Instead, we often saw him laboring, throwing 20-plus pitches in any given frame. The longer an inning grew, the more his confidence seemed to waver, leading to nibbling at the edges or unraveling with big misses over the plate. All these factors contributed to wild inconsistency. His once nearly unhittable curve became hittable. His opponents batted .357 against this pitch type last season. The movement profile wasn't all that different, but he was again missing in similar ways as with his fastball, and the same was largely observed with his other 2 off-speed pitches as well. Most nights he operated as a 2-pitch pitcher, just his fastball and whatever other pitch he could at least semi-locate. This obviously made him predictable and easier to hit, as he himself said. But perhaps the most telling insight came from Miller himself in mid-2024. "It's hard. I'm going through it right now, to say the least." The mental toll was becoming obvious. Every start carried the weight of previous failures, and the still 26-year-old often pitched like he was walking on eggshells. That was a far cry from the confident, aggressive rookie who attacked hitters in 2023. Teammates and coaches noted he was putting in the work and doing his best to keep a good attitude, but the bad results kept piling up, creating a vicious cycle. Being yo-yoed back and forth between AAA and the majors likely only added to this pressure. Everyone seems to agree that Miller's downfall was a perfect storm. Injuries led to lost command, which created a crisis of confidence. The changes that were then made to his delivery that were supposed to prevent injury and fix these issues instead further messed up his effectiveness. His main weapons went from overpowering to batting practice, and he just hasn't been able to adjust. Bobby Miller's journey from budding star to struggling pitcher has been astonishing in its speed and severity. In 2023, he was a 24-year-old phenom firing 100-mile-per-hour fastballs and putting up numbers that screamed future ace. Fast forward 2 seasons, and he's been demoted to AAA relief work, trying to rebuild his career from scratch with poor results in the process. Miller's mindset entering 2025 shows both sides of the dichotomy he's more than likely still operating with, caught between worrying and fighting. It was obviously a rough year, but I saw what I was able to do as a rookie, so that's the bright side. Another bright side is it can't get much worse than what it was last year. Unfortunately, you could probably say the same thing about this season as it comes to a close. At 26, time is still on Miller's side. The Dodgers' experiment to convert him into a reliever could represent a new chapter, as perhaps simplifying his role will allow his natural talent to play up again, or maybe he'll crash and burn, leaving behind one of the bigger what-if stories in modern MLB history.
Alright everybody, if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching, and if you did, consider checking out any of these other videos on your screen right now for other content just like this. Also, if you ever see anything you'd like to see me detail in the video, feel free to reach out to my email, basebpoet@gmail.com, and if I end up using your idea, I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. It's hard to believe it, but it's been about 9 years now, nearly a decade since one of the all-time great World Series performances. During the 2014 Fall Classic, San Francisco Giants lefty Madison Bumgarner was beyond good. He was pretty much untouchable, and his heroic efforts to net the Giants not 1, not 2, but 3 games in that series against the Kansas City Royals have since become the stuff of legend. So, where's Madison today? Putting the finishing touches on a Hall of Fame career, leading a new team to the postseason like Nate Eovaldi, celebrating a pennant with the upstart Arizona Diamondbacks? Not exactly. He's back on his ranch in rural North Carolina and seemingly out of the game entirely at just age 34. Despite being barely into the 4th season of a 5-year, $85 million contract, the Diamondbacks decided to put the former World Series MVP out to pasture after only 4 appearances in 2023. No other team has signed him, even with the Diamondbacks pretty much footing the bill through 2024. That's right, after ascending to one of the highest possible peaks in baseball and helping lead the Giants to 3 World Series championships, Bumgarner was DFA'd just like any other aging veteran, whose stuff had deserted him, and his stuff certainly has done that since his illustrious heyday. Madison Bumgarner grew up in a log house in rural North Carolina in an area called Bumtown because of the large number of German immigrants to the area who also had his surname. It was Madison himself, though, put Bumtown on the map. As a dominant high school pitcher, Bumgarner would be named the Gatorade North Carolina Player of the Year. He was a highly touted prospect, earning the nickname Mad Bum due to his intense competitive nature and ability to overpower hitters with his then mid-90s fastball from a low arm slot. He attracted so much attention from scouts that his father, who also built their log house, erected a wall around his high school bullpen to keep out the distractions. The San Francisco Giants selected Bumgarner in the 1st round, with the 10th overall pick in the 2007 MLB draft. He rose quickly through the minors, pairing his 4-seam fastball with a sleek cutter, a sharp curve, and the occasional changeup. What's more, despite his young age, he seemed to have an even-keeled nature that lent itself well to the big stage, often showing balls of steel in tight situations that would make a player 10 years his senior crumble. That's part of the reason why, at just age 20, he was called up to make his major league debut pitching against the San Diego Padres in September 2009, the 2nd youngest pitcher ever to start a game for the Giants. He would go on to make 4 appearances, posting a cool 1.80 ERA in his first taste of big league baseball. Bumgarner was called up again in June the following season, pitching well enough to earn a full-time spot in the Giants' rotation by August. The southpaw responded with that signature grit, posting an ERA of just 1.13 in 5 September starts during the Giants' successful run to the National League West Division Championship, while earning a spot on Baseball America's 2010 All-Rookie team. But it was in the postseason that Madison was at his best. In his first taste of the World Series that year, he posted 8 scoreless innings, striking out 6 and allowing only 3 hits, in a Game 4 victory over the Texas Rangers. He was the 5th youngest pitcher to ever start a World Series game, and his performance gave the Giants a 3-1 series lead, en route to winning their first World Series championship in San Francisco. In 2011, his first full season in the majors, the young Bumgarner solidified his spot in the Giants' rotation with a 3.21 ERA, 2.67 FIP, and 8.4 Ks per 9 over more than 200 innings. He, however, did not get a lot of run support. In fact, he had a 12-1 record in the games in which the Giants' offense scored 3 or more runs, but a 1-12 one when they didn't. Since it was an odd-numbered year, the Giants didn't make it to the World Series, but Bumgarner and his team came roaring back in 2012. The 22-year-old lefty pretty much replicated his success of the prior season, though now with much better run support, netting him a 16-7 record while posting a 3.37 ERA and striking out 191 batters in 208 innings. He struggled in the NLDS and NLCS to the tune of allowing 10 earned runs in just 8 full innings, but the Giants still emerged victorious, and faced the AL champion Detroit Tigers in the World Series, where for the second time out of the last 3 years, Bumgarner went to work. In Game 2, he mowed down the Tigers, striking out 7 and giving up only 2 hits en route to pitching 7 scoreless innings in a 2-0 victory. He became the first pitcher to begin his World Series career with 15 scoreless innings, since another southpaw, Bruce Hurst, did so back in 1986. The Giants swept the series for their second title in 3 seasons, giving Bumgarner 2 World Series rings, with somehow an even brighter future laying ahead. The Giants predictably had another off year in 2013, again it being an odd-numbered year, but Bumgarner was better than ever. He made his first All-Star team, posted career bests in ERA at 2.77, WHIP at 1.03, and strikeouts at 199. Again, due to a lack of run support, he only managed to win 13 games. And then came the year that would cement the legend of Mad Bum. 2014 would again see him raise the bar in the regular season, posting an 18-10 record with a 2.98 ERA and 219 strikeouts in 217 1/3 innings, his first full season with a K per 9 above 9. He finished 4th in voting for the NL Cy Young Award after the campaign, but it was the postseason, as usual, where Bumgarner would shine most, and brighter than ever. It started with the critical 4-hit shutout against the Pittsburgh Pirates in the NL wildcard game that allowed the Giants to advance to the NLDS against the Nationals. Bumgarner suffered a rare loss in that series, but when the Giants advanced to the NLCS to face the Cardinals, he rebounded, throwing 7 2/3 shutout innings in a Game 1 victory, before limiting the Cards to 3 runs in 8 innings in Game 5, being named the NLCS MVP as a result, as the Giants advanced to their 3rd World Series in 5 years. It's hard to overstate just how much Madison Bumgarner meant to his team in the 2014 WS against the Kansas City Royals. Did he win it by himself? Not exactly, but he did take his team and put it on his back in a way that few pitchers ever have. It started with a Game 1 victory in which he allowed 1 run in 7 dominant innings. Bumgarner was somehow even better in Game 5, hurling a complete game 4-hit gem of a shutout. As if that wasn't enough, Bumgarner returned on 2 games rest to pitch in relief in Game 7, but not just for the customary inning or 2. With the game on the line and the Giants up by 1 run, manager Bruce Bochy signaled for Bumgarner in the 5th inning. After giving up a single to Omar Infante, Madison would proceed to mow down 14 consecutive hitters with the championship on the line. Then, with the tying run on 3rd in the 9th inning and 2 outs, Bumgarner was left in to face Royals catcher Salvador Perez. Salvi had the platoon advantage against a guy who had thrown more than 270 pitches in a 7-game span, but it wouldn't matter. Bumgarner induced a foul pop-up that ended the game, giving the Giants yet another championship, their 3rd in just 5 seasons. Mad Bum's incredible 5 scoreless innings earned him perhaps the most impressive save in recent baseball history, and after finishing the series with a 2-0 record and a minuscule 0.43 ERA, he was named World Series MVP. All told, Bumgarner gave up just 1 run in 21 World Series innings. He looked nearly invincible at this point, and as clutch as any pitcher had ever been. And over the next 2 seasons with the Giants, his success continued, even if his teams finally ran out. In 15 and 16, Bumgarner put together 2 more All-Star caliber years, going a combined 33 and 18 with just a 2.83 ERA, while posting nearly 10 Ks per 9 and ERA pluses over 130 each season over that span as well. By age 27, he had 100 career victories and an ERA of 2.99. He looked like he might be headed for the Hall of Fame, until, at the relatively young age of 27, Mad Bum started to undergo one of the most hair-raising declines in recent memory. There were some early signs in Bumgarner's final few seasons with the Giants that something strange was happening. For one, his fly ball rate was increasing noticeably. From 2010 to 2015, Bumgarner gave up fly balls on only 35% of batted balls. However, that rate rose to 40.1% in his final 4 seasons as a Giant, the 28th highest in baseball. But perhaps that was understandable. Hitters were starting to increase launch angles during that period to elevate more balls. And at least he had the friendly confines of Oracle Park to let a lot of those deep fly balls go to die. But Bumgarner's strikeout rate was also declining during that period. From his peak of 10 K per 9 in 2016, he fell all the way to just under 8 2 seasons later. And if that wasn't worrying enough, by 2019, his last year with the Giants, hitters were hitting the ball noticeably harder against him as well. He was in the 10th percentile in hard hit rate, and the 9th percentile in average exit velocity against. What's more, a number of injuries seemed to have somewhat sapped his stuff. including his fastball, which averaged about 93 miles per hour in 2014, before coming to sit closer to 90 in 2019, while his curveball had lost about half of its vertical movement over that same span as well. His cutter was quickly becoming his only plus pitch. Still, he did manage to post a 3.54 ERA over those final 3 seasons on some pretty bad Giants teams, so nobody was ready to throw in the towel on Mad Bum yet. In fact, the Arizona Diamondbacks decided to throw a 5-year, $85 million contract offer at him instead, in what was then the second biggest free agent deal in team history. It was questionable even at the time, as Bumgarner was 30 years old and already logged a lot of innings and dealt with those aforementioned injury issues in recent years, but he was still a big name with some decent numbers, who had the potential to be a veteran leader on a young, talented D-back squad. Then the COVID pandemic shut down the start of the 2019 season, and Bumgarner fell off the grid in North Carolina. By the time things restarted that summer, he was seemingly out of shape, with the results to prove it. A 6.48 ERA in 9 starts in 2020, and a fastball velocity that clocked in at a career worst 88.4 miles per hour. It seemed like it was now time to start getting legitimately worried, but 2020 was a write-off for a lot of reasons, and for a lot of players, and Bumgarner pledged to return in 2021 ready to play. He did end up posting a more respectable 4.67 ERA on a lousy team, even managing to throw a 7-inning no-hitter against the Braves in a doubleheader. But he was still nowhere close to the dominant level he had once been at, nor even where he was 2 years prior. Unlike some veteran pitchers, who learn to pitch with reduced velocity and get batters out in new and more creative ways, Bumgarner never really could seem to make the adjustment. In fact, it seemed as if he was still trying to do what he had always done, and it just wasn't working anymore. In 2022, tensions between Bumgarner and the Arizona coaching staff seemingly grew from what had been consistent mild conflict throughout 21, which may have been somewhat responsible for the 32-year-old having yet another abysmal season, posting a 7-15 record with a 4.88 ERA, while giving up a major league leading 50 doubles. Then, in 2023, after making just those atrocious 4 starts with a 10.26 ERA, the Diamondbacks released Bumgarner back into the North Carolina countryside. So, what exactly did go wrong for Bumgarner? Injuries? Maybe partially. He did miss considerable time in both the 17 and 18 seasons. Diminishing stuff as a result, his stuff did see some decline following. Perhaps it was the fortunes of his clubs falling so far that he became dejected and detached. He always did seem to perform best under the brightest lights. But let's not beat around the bush. Everyone ages differently, and for Mad Bum, Father Time came calling early. But that didn't have to stop him on its face. Clayton Kershaw is a great comp here, as he too is a big lefty from the South, whose dominant fastball largely deserted him by his early 30s. However, where Clayton managed to adapt his repertoire accordingly, Madison was not. They even shared 2/3 of the same pitches, a 4-seamer and a curveball, but perhaps the greatest separator between them was in that third offering, which for Kersh became a dominant slider that he now throws nearly as often as his heater, and for Mad Bum, his cutter, which registered as one of baseball's most hittable pitches over the last few seasons. With perhaps a couple tweaks that may have even been suggested to him along the way by the D-backs, he might have managed to maintain relevancy into his mid-30s. But alas, those tweaks were not to be. And now, at just 33, no one seems to know what's going to come next for the Southpaw. Bumgarner's career is now likely over, in which case he would finish with a total of 134 wins, a 3.47 ERA, and a B-WAR of 37.3 to go along with more than 2,000 strikeouts. Not too shabby, but definitely nowhere near the Hall of Famer people were theorizing he could be back in 2014. In this way, maybe he was more Carlos Zambrano than Clayton Kershaw, a young player who dominated the world for a while, only to see himself out of the game without much seeming desire to get back in. We all know more than likely some middling team would have picked him up in 23 had he wanted to lace up his cleats once more. How about the A's? They'd kill for a recognizable name who has major pull in the Bay Area for the league minimum. But as of now, it really does seem like we've seen the last of Madison. Hey, maybe it was for the best. With the DH gone, we already weren't going to see any more mad bombs anyway, right? Can a 40-homer hitting position player actually become a major league pitcher as well? At least, that is, if your name isn't Shohei Ohtani. Joey Gallo sure hopes so. There was a time when Gallo was the poster boy of the vaunted 3 true outcomes approach that has come to define today's game. Homers, walks, and strikeouts. A Gallo at-bat usually ended with one of the 3. In fact, 58% of the time for his career, the most of all time. When he was going good, the 3 were divided into portions that made Gallo a valuable player. Sure, he struck out prodigiously, but he also had crazy pop and a good OBP, with some pretty impressive defense mixed in there as well. But when you can't make one of the worst teams in MLB, the 2025 Chicago White Sox, you know that your baseball career has reached a pretty low point. That's what happened to Gallo by the end of this spring. Even the terrible Chi Sox had said no to a guy who could, seemingly, play third, first, left, right, and center field for minimal stretches. His hitting had gotten that bad. But is it the end for his playing career in the majors? Well, yes and no. For him as a hitter, yes. But as a pitcher, we'll see. Because as the age-old adage goes, you can never have enough pitching. Just ask the Orioles. And here's the thing, Joey Gallo isn't deluding himself. He was a pitcher in high school, capable of throwing in the mid-90s. He's 6'5" and 250 pounds. No one doubts the physicality. But why are we even having this discussion? Why in the world is Joey Gallo not in somebody's lineup crushing bombs and whiffing and walking, when just 4 years ago he was putting up a 4+ WAR with 38 homers while leading his league in free passes? Where did it all go wrong? Here's a well-worn photo of some kids playing baseball. Just some normal kids. Bryce and Joey. Bryce Harper and Joey Gallo, that is. Harper was 9 and Gallo was 8, playing on a travel team called the Desert Storm. Even then, Harper was a legend, a giant who threw so hard that the only guy on the team who could catch him was Gallo. And at the plate, they would just walk him, Gallo said, and I would come up and I would crush a ball over the center field fence, and they would be like, holy moly, this guy rakes too. We never realized it at the time, but I was like his protection, because of just how mythical he was. Nobody was going to let him hit. People often think that Kris Bryant, another Las Vegas native and first-round pick, played with Harper as a kid. But they played together for just 2 months as teens. Gallo and Harper were in the same circles their whole childhood. And like Harper, Joey indeed did ridiculous things in high school, like launch a 443-foot homer at Petco Park during a showcase before his senior year. Like Harper, he played on Team USA 18U. And like Harper, his team went undefeated. As a senior at Bishop Gorman High School, Gallo dominated, an average of .509 with 21 home runs and 80 RBIs. His team won a state title each of his 4 seasons. He signed with LSU in November, shocking everyone in Vegas who had expected him to do so with UNLV. College, though, wasn't really a major part of the plan, because, like Harper, he was destined to be a first-round pick. And he was indeed, taken 39th overall by the Texas Rangers. Gallo didn't exactly fly under the radar in the minors. He was a top 10 prospect because of his unreal power potential. In 2013, as a 19-year-old, Gallo became the first teenager to hit 40 home runs in a minor league season since 1962. That year pretty much encapsulated everything Gallo was about. He crushed the ball, sure, but also struck out 172 times in 111 games, while driving in 88 and walking 50 times. His OPS leapt off the page at 961. In the evolving world of data analytics, Gallo was pure gold. Maybe he struck out a ton, but he also grounded into just 2 double plays. His hits went for extra bases and created runs. Attributing some massive failure to striking out, the new thinking went, was outdated. Launch angle with authority was the entire point, and Gallo's launch angle led to homers and Ks, not rally-snuffing twin killings or flaccid infield singles. In 2014, he had a total of 42 homers, second in all of baseball to fellow prospect Kris Bryant's 43. The Vegas kids who played the hot corner and rattled the light poles. Their own Bryce Harper, then in his sophomore season following a Rookie of the Year winning first year, and it was a trio seemingly created in the desert by the baseball gods to inflict maximum damage. By the next season, in June 2015, Gallo was making his debut in the show, getting called up to cover for Adrian Beltre after he went on the IL. But alas, his time in the majors was sparing for the next 2 years, as he showed some pop, but not nearly enough contact overall, causing him to bounce up and down between MLB and the minors. In 53 games, he slugged 7 homers, but also hit under 200 with an OPS south of 700. It wasn't until 2017, when Gallo was 23, that he managed to find regular playing time at Arlington, and by year's end, he had his first successful campaign. But it certainly wasn't immediate. In his first 115 ABs, he struck out 54 times. Then, on May 12th, he slugged a 3-run walk-off homer, and everything took off from there. By then, the Rangers were using him all over the field, at first, in the outfield, sometimes at third or DHing. When all was said and done, he had rode that midsummer hot streak into becoming just one of 21 players in MLB history to hit more than 40 homers. He ended up with 41, before turning 24. He became the 3rd player, along with Mark McGwire and Barry Bonds, to have more homers than singles in a season. He ranked in the top 1% in MLB in average exit velo, hard hit percentage, and expected WOBA, a staggering .567 when the league averaged just .368. Perhaps predictably, based on his power output, no one in baseball saw fewer pitches in the strike zone than Gallo. But when he got a ball in the zone, few were more productive. The problem was he was one of the worst bad ball hitters in the league, as his WOBA fell 250 points when he put a ball outside the zone in play. When he did manage to make contact in the zone, he did things like blast a dinger 490 feet off Garrett Richards, then the ace of the Angels. Said Adrian Beltre, "It was unbelievable. There's no way that was 490 feet. It was over 500. It was an impressive 2-strike swing. We all know the power, but that was a really good swing." He had no problem turning around 97 miles per hour off of future Hall of Famer Justin Verlander. Yet, he also did strike out 196 times, a K rate that ranked him in the bottom 1%, right next to Chris Davis. Still, it fit his mold, and he still had a healthy OBP of 333, fueled by 75 walks. Going into 2018, Gallo was probably at an all-time high in terms of major league confidence, but then he went out in the first half of the season and hit just 187 with a 42% K rate. Sure, he had 22 bombs, but pretty much everybody started to wonder if the lack of contact was worth the power. The second half of 2018 would prove to be a harbinger of what was to come for the next year and a half. After the break, Gallo hit 256, including in August where he hit 290. He ended up with 18 more homers, slugged at a home run rate 50% higher. By year's end, he had essentially repeated 2017, hitting 40 homers, batting .206, and striking out 207 times while walking 74. Over that 2-year stretch, the slugger was averaging 2.7 more a season, making him a solid big leaguer. But that second half of 2018 showed that there was seemingly more in the tank. Could he repeat it? Could he hit over 250 with his power? In 2019, Gallo built on the strong second half of the previous season and became the hitter the Rangers long hoped he could be. As Fangraphs put it, Joey cracked the code. He hit .253 with 22 homers and 49 RBIs, which might not sound super impressive until you learn that he played in only 70 games. First, he tweaked his oblique and missed most of June. Then, shortly after making his first All-Star game, in which his homer accounted for the winning run for the AL, Gallo's hand started to bother him. In the 9 games after the All-Star game, he hit just 118 with 19 Ks. In July, he would have surgery to fix a fractured hamate bone. But let's examine what happened to Gallo before he got hurt. Quite simply, he was swinging less. His chase rate dropped to 24.2%, down from 32.2% the season prior. Consequently, his walk rate rose to 17.5%, which would have been the 4th best in baseball had he qualified. Since he stopped chasing as much, he saw more pitches in the zone, 39.9%, 30th lowest overall in MLB, but 29 spots ahead of where he'd been the prior 2 seasons, when he was dead last. This was the code he'd cracked. Swing less, except for with 2 strikes. Don't chase, wait for your pitch. It all led to an OPS plus of 145, a career high, along with a career high tying WAR of 3.1. Again, based on less than half a season. He also saved 3 runs, playing excellent defense in both right and center field. Gallo kept the same approach during the truncated 2020 season. Swing less, chase less, hit the mistakes in the zone for a homer. But things didn't return to his 2019 level. He hit just 181, albeit with 10 homers. This pushed his OPS plus down to 87, a 58-point drop. What happened? In 2019, about 37% of his fly balls had gone for homers. In 2020, that number slid to 16.7%. His ranking went from 2nd in all of MLB in that category to 122nd. What replaced the homers were pop-ups. He led the league with a 17.6% in this regard, double what he had had the year before. His launch angle had crept up. What's more, his average exit velo had dissipated from 94.8 miles per hour all the way down to 91.2. He was barreling fewer balls, making weaker contact, and just generally not being able to crush mistakes like he had the previous season. And what's more, the shift was killing him. His expected batting average on ground balls was .268, but his actual batting average was far, far lower. Same with line drives. Maybe he was trying too hard to beat the shift, but Gallo's 2020 offered a solid reason as to why the rules ended up being changed in 2023 regarding modern shifts. But at least his defense was stellar, helping him to win a Gold Glove for his outfield work while contributing massively to a still healthy 1.6 WAR in 57 games. Then in 2021 for a stretch, Gallo seemed to crack the code again. Not at first, because through June 19th he sat at just a .214, .373, .391 slash, with 11 homers and 276 plate appearances. It was pretty middle of the road on a middling Texas team playing in a new ballpark that seemed pitcher-friendly, against some of the more extreme shifts we've ever seen. Then he went off. From June 20th to July 10th, in an 18-game span, Gallo smashed 13 homers, while fanning just 22 times. His OPS went from 764 to 923, and his WAR climbed to 9th best in MLB at 3.6. Deservedly, he made his second All-Star team. Then he was traded to the Yankees in a deadline deal, and in the Big Apple, Gallo flopped, hitting just 160 with 13 homers in 58 games, alongside 88 Ks and a subpar 93 OPS plus. He also made a couple big errors in the field in late September, drawing the wrath of Yankees fans. His 2022 season certainly didn't win them over either. Over 82 games as a result of injuries and diminishing playing time, he hit just 159 with 12 homers. But perhaps even more worrying, his exit velo had cratered down to just 88 miles per hour on average, when it had hovered around 95 in his prime. For the second year in a row, he was dealt at the deadline, this time to the Dodgers. The change of scenery certainly didn't help, however, as Gallo struck out 57 times in 137 plate appearances and again hit around 160. When postseason time came around, he ended up being a defensive replacement for just one game in the NLDS. This might explain why, during his first stab at free agency, the Twins signed him for just a one-year deal worth $11 million. For this amount, the team would see him come to the plate 332 times and post a whiff rate of 44.3%, the highest ever measured during the StatCast era. Yet, because he hit 21 homers and walked 48 times, Gallo's OPS Plus came in right at 100 on the nose, an average MLB hitter. But declining defense had begun to bite his overall value, leading to just a 0.5 WAR in 111 games, a pace worse than an average MLB starter, who's expected to sit around 2.0 over 162. It was then before 2024 the Nationals would take a chance on a one-year deal, and despite being just 30 years old, Gallo's body began to fall apart even more than in years past. He attempted to play through a slew of injuries, which might explain why his bat speed in 2024 dipped to just 71.3 miles per hour, middle of the pack, whereas the season before he'd been in the 84th percentile. The slower bat speed helped contribute to a horrible year, an OPS Plus of 73 with 102 Ks and just 223 plate appearances. Although his defense was better, much of it came as a first baseman, which largely negated its value. In 2025, the best deal he could get was a minor league contract with the White Sox, who were probably hoping he could get back to hitting even 180 with 30 homers, tolerating a 40 to 45% strikeout along the way, a maddening line for almost anyone else, but one that probably would have been admissible for the tall lefty. But alas, the White Sox would release him on March 16th after he went just 2 for 20 with 11 Ks and 0 extra base hits. It was over for Gallo, right? Wrong. Well, at least partially. Shortly after being cut, Gallo announced he was becoming a full-time pitcher. And why not? In 2020, he had an outfield arm strength that ranked in the 100th percentile, with a max throw of 99.3 miles per hour. Anthony Gose is another outfielder who's tried pitching, and actually made it to the bigs with the Guardians in 2021. Over 3 seasons, he went 3-0 with a 4.78 ERA over 32 innings pitched, averaging 11.5 Ks per 9. He could even throw a 100-mile-per-hour four-seamer, which certainly helped because his control was terrible overall. Could Joey Gallo become the next Anthony Gose? It's going to be hard because Gallo hasn't consistently thrown off a mound since 2012, his senior year of high school, but he's still 6'5" and 250 pounds, ideal metrics for a hurler. And Joey certainly passed the eye test in recent bullpen footage shared by himself, with the fastball seemingly touching the mid-90s along with the sharp slider. And considering he's always conducted himself with the utmost class, he has many rooting for him to make it back to the show. Gallo has the most plate appearances of any player whose career batting average is under 200. He's the only player in MLB history with more than 2,000 plate appearances to have a batting average that low, yet an OBP over 300. He's also the only player in MLB history with more than 200 career homers and less than 250 singles. And among players with over 1,500 plate appearances, his career K rate of 38.0% is the highest of, you guessed it, all time. That's certainly a lot to wrap your head around, but it tells you a lot about both versions of his hitter persona. A hulking presence capable of leveling missile shots off his bat that could put many legendary power hitters to shame, and scare enough fear into pitchers to walk him consistently, while simultaneously going through long stretches where he looked like a single A guy who'd been teleported to the big leagues for some reason. And of course, as his decline really took hold, the former became much more common, sadly, than the latter. He truly was one of a kind. And maybe, just maybe, his story isn't over quite yet.
It was the shot heard round the baseball world this summer. June 7th, 2023, Cincinnati Reds phenom Elly De La Cruz stepped to the plate in the bottom of the first inning against the Dodgers. It was just his second major league game, and on an 0-1 pitch with the runner on, this happened.
Oh, goodness! That ball had a family!
The 458-foot blast, which nearly left the building, heralded the arrival of baseball's newest star. It also seems to have perhaps marked the end for a former one. The man who threw the ball that nearly ended up in Kentucky was 30-year-old Dodgers pitcher Noah Syndergaard. De La Cruz and the Reds rocked him for 6 runs in just 3 innings in that outing. After the game, the Dodgers placed Noah on the 15-day IL, citing a blister on his finger. But with the 7.16 ERA, it's hard to believe that it's just a blister that's hampering Syndergaard. "It's kind of hard to stop the bleeding right now," he said after the Reds game. "I'm kind of running out of words to explain what's going on." Noah Syndergaard isn't just any veteran pitcher. He's frickin' Thor. He used to walk the field like a god amongst men, amongst boys. A god that could throw 102-mile-per-hour fastballs and 95-mile-per-hour sliders. Syndergaard and Mets teammate Jacob deGrom were perhaps the most feared pitching duo in the game at one point. And now, he only seems to make highlight reels when he does something like this.
A 2-run bomb!
Say it ain't so, Noah. Say it ain't so. So, how did we get here? What on earth happened to Noah Syndergaard? It didn't take long for the baseball world to fall in love with Syndergaard's journey, from awkward teenager to the Norse god of the mound. Sports Illustrated called him Cinderella. Growing up in a suburb of Dallas, Texas, Syndergaard was a 5'11", 180-pound 14-year-old with glasses and baby fat. He was slow and uncoordinated, insecure and quiet. He couldn't yet throw 80 miles per hour. But over a few years, Syndergaard transformed himself from a clumsy high school freshman to a ripped 6'6" prospect who could touch the high 90s with his fastball. This resulted in Toronto picking him 38th overall in the 2010 draft. In the minors, he started to grow his hair out and throw a ridiculously hard slider in the low 90s.
But before we get more into that, I want to tell you a bit about today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, and how you can still salvage your fantasy season today. Yes, today, even as we near the All-Star break. You see, right now, until July 14th, Underdog is running a fantasy campaign called the 7th Inning Stretch, where you can draft a team for the second half of the MLB season. In what's called their best ball format, all you need to do is join the 7th Inning Stretch, draft your team, and that's it. There are no waivers, no trades, and no in-season management. Draft 20 players and get the best cumulative scores in your starting lineup, made up of 3 pitchers, 3 infielders, 3 outfielders, and 1 flex each week of the regular season. Getting started is simple. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com, then sign up with promo code MTC, and Underdog will double your initial deposit up to $100. The 7th Inning Stretch is $150,000 in total prizes, and it's only $7 to enter. So, what are you waiting for? Sign up for Underdog with promo code MTC and get that first deposit doubled so you can draft in the 7th Inning Stretch today. Now, back to our video.
And what has gone down as one of the most lopsided trades in recent memory, the Blue Jays traded him to the Mets with a few other players for aging knuckleballer R.A. Dickey. By May 2015, when he was just 22 years old, he burst onto the scene in New York. Mets fans fell for him fast, calling him Thor just a few starts into his big league career. By the end of his first partial season in the big leagues, Syndergaard had a .324 ERA with 166 strikeouts and just 31 walks in 150 innings. But it was in the playoffs where the young flamethrower announced his presence with authority. The Mets won 3 of the 4 games he started and turned him for a pivotal inning in Game 5 of the NLDS against the Dodgers, en route to a 3-2 win. In the World Series, Syndergaard started the Mets' only victory against the eventual champion Kansas City Royals, going 6 innings and allowing just 3 hits. In his first full big league season in 2016, Norseman Manoah just got better, earning an all-star nod with an ERA of 2.56 in the first half of the season. Syndergaard finished the year with a 14-9 record, .260 ERA, and a league-leading .229 FIP, with a fastball routinely touching triple digits and a slider topping out at 95, a then unheard-of feat. Few starters in baseball threw as hard as the young Texan. Cinderella had arrived at the ball. But it didn't take very long for the magic to start wearing off. The clock began to strike midnight during Syndergaard's first start of 2017, when he was removed from a game with a blood blister. This was just the start of a series of injuries, including a torn back muscle, that would sideline the formerly immortal flamethrower. He would start just 2 more games that year, going only 3 innings and 2 late season appearances. Mostly healthy again in 2018, Syndergaard returned to form, briefly. He posted a .286 ERA in April, with the return of his fastball being highly publicized. Mets fans rejoiced. Then he strained a ligament in his right index finger and missed nearly 2 months. And, as if things couldn't get any worse, he was put on the IL again after contracting hand, foot, and mouth disease while working at a kids' camp during the All-Star break. Once back on the mound, however, Syndergaard continued to deliver the goods. He finished the injury-plagued season with a 13-4 record and a .303 ERA. Despite the now litany of ailments over the short period, his stuff still hadn't seen any significant decline in quality. And so it went for his first 3.5 years in the majors. Syndergaard consistently dealt with the injury bug, but when he was healthy, he was one of the best pitchers in the game. From 2015 to 2018, Syndergaard's 2.66 FIP was second only to Clayton Kershaw. Only Kershaw, Jacob deGrom, and Max Scherzer bested his 2.93 ERA. His strikeout to walk differential of 21.6% was top 10 in the game. His ERA plus never sank below 123. Syndergaard's four-seam fastball velocity had no equal during this period. No other starting pitcher had an average velocity within 1 mile per hour of his 98.1 average velo. Likewise, he had the fastest slider velocity in the league as well, at 91.6 miles per hour, a full 1.6 faster than the next pitcher, his teammate deGrom. His 89.8 mile per hour changeup was also the fastest in the league. Thor's thunder seemed to strike harder than everyone else's, no matter how he manipulated it. Then came 2019. Syndergaard was healthy but got off to a very slow start. Then, in June, he made yet another trip to the IL with a hamstring injury. By season's end, he had made 32 appearances and thrown 197 innings, but his numbers, including an ERA of 4.28 and an ERA plus of 96, were easily the worst of his career. In retrospect, it was the beginning of the end for Thor. Things would get even worse. Much worse. March 2020, an ominous and impactful month for so many reasons. As the world braces for the explosion of the COVID-19 pandemic, Noah Syndergaard feels a twinge in his right elbow during spring training. He gets an MRI. It's a torn UCL. He'll need Tommy John surgery. It's his most severe injury yet, but no longer a career-threatening one thanks to medical advances. Major League Baseball shuts down. Syndergaard shuts down. Things go quiet for a long time. On September 28, 2021, Syndergaard finally returns to a Major League mound. He throws one inning against the Marlins. He would only throw in one more game that year, with the 2021 season ending with Noah only having thrown 2 innings in his last 2 major league seasons. That offseason, the Angels take a flyer on him as he hits free agency for the first time, signing him to a 1-year, $21 million deal for 2022. Angels fans and management crossed their fingers and were cautiously optimistic. In 15 starts, Syndergaard was decent but not great, logging a 3.83 ERA and 105 ERA plus in his time there. Post Tommy John surgery, his velocity was down, and he had more so turned himself into a sinker-slider pitcher, relying on movement instead of brute force to get batters out. During his final 3 starts with the Angels, Thor failed to go more than 5 innings. Just before the trade deadline, the Angels shipped him out to the Phillies. The former Norse God of Thunder was now worth just then-failed prospect Mickey Moniak and low-ranking minor leaguer Jadiel Sanchez. Syndergaard didn't get any better in Philadelphia. He posted a 4.12 ERA in 10 appearances, managing to rack up just under 55 innings along the way. His K rate plummeted to a career low 5.1 per 9. He was no longer a number 1, 2, or even 3 starter, but the red-hot Phils figured out how to use him in the playoffs. Syndergaard started the game in which they closed out the Braves in the NLDS, and he helped them build a 3-1 lead over the Padres in the NLCS, which they did eventually close out. Against all odds, Syndergaard found himself back in the World Series for yet another NL East team, but the series didn't go too well for Noah or the Phillies. In his one start, he gave up 2 runs in 3 innings. The Astros won yet another championship, and the disgraced God of Thunder returned to free agency once again. Still, despite all of his recent struggles, there was some hope this offseason when Syndergaard signed with the Dodgers, a team known for helping struggling pitchers find themselves, including recent rebuilds like Andrew Heaney and Tyler Anderson. Syndergaard had also made some appearances on Tread Athletic's social media page, an organization known for helping pitchers reclaim their careers. Flash forward to the modern day, and it doesn't really seem like anything has worked. Through 12 starts, he's amassed a 7.16 ERA and atrocious 62 ERA+, culminating in the beating he received from Elly De La Cruz and the Reds. So, what exactly happened to Noah Syndergaard? Well, for starters, he was, quite simply, not the same pitcher after Tommy John surgery. He can no longer overpower hitters with his fastball, which is currently averaging 92.3 miles per hour, down more than 5 miles per hour from where it clocked back in 2019 before surgery. To compensate for this lack of velo, Syndergaard has worked hard to add inches of rise and horizontal break to his various heaters, but so far, big league hitters like De La Cruz are eating this remodeled fastball for lunch. Without his true power, Syndergaard has had trouble getting the rest of his pitches working. He's now ditched the slider and replaced it with a cutter. The cutter is actually slower than his prime slider, but faster than his current one. However, it has 4 fewer inches of horizontal sweep, and it's not been nearly as effective as his hard slider once was. Hitters are currently batting .359 off the pitch. Syndergaard has also started trying to throw his curveball again, and even a splitter, but so far, these 2 pitches account for fewer than 12% of his total offerings this season. And that's what Noah Syndergaard now looks like in 2023, someone constantly tinkering with his arsenal and not finding a whole lot of success in a game he used to make look so very easy. Someone once again on the injured list with no clear path to return. So, have we reached rock bottom for Noah Syndergaard? Is there any prospect he could still return to form? Well, yes there is. Plenty of fastball pitchers have lost their heaters and figured out new ways to pitch later in their careers. With some like Dan Haren and Josh Beckett, the cutter provided the new out pitch, extending their effectiveness by multiple seasons. Others like Barry Zito turned to perfecting their breaking pitch as he did with his famous slutter. Still others like Roy Oswalt relied on a killer changeup to stay relevant. Perhaps Syndergaard can find his new out pitch, perhaps not. Even if his career didn't turn out the way most expected, he still has a chance to be a valuable asset to an MLB team, given he can learn how to pitch with his new repertoire, and then perhaps even make yet another run at that elusive World Series title. Now, thanks for watching guys, leave a like if you enjoyed the vid, and click this playlist for other essay content just like this one. Have a great day everyone.
July 8th, 2017, Yankee Stadium. Clint Frazier, the 22-year-old phenom with bright red hair and ridiculous bat speed, stepped up to the plate against Milwaukee closer Corey Knebel, one of the best relievers in baseball at the time. Frazier didn't disappoint, crushing a 97-mile-per-hour fastball into the right field bleachers. The Yankees won 5-3 on the walk-off dinger. The stadium exploded. Teammates mobbed him at home plate and doused him with any beverage they could find. Gary Sanchez, then only a year removed from his own signature first campaign, was positively beaming. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The future Yankee great had announced himself to the Big Apple, and with a prospect resume like few others, it seemed like only the first of many instances just like this. 7 years later, Frazier retired at 29 years old, after spending the summer in independent ball. Today, he runs a podcast. In what came down to a concoction of horrible medical luck, questionable organizational decisions, and over a half-decade of subpar play, the superstar-to-be became the can't-miss that did, and what will go down as one of the most tragic career trajectories in recent New York Yankee history. However, it wasn't even the Yankees that had originally drafted Clint. Instead, it was Cleveland that took him 5th overall in the 2013 class out of Loganville High School in Georgia. It was well known the kid could absolutely rake. His senior year, he hit .485 with 17 homers. Gatorade named him National Baseball Player of the Year, certifying him as the best high school player in America. Then Indians, now Guardians, scouting director Brad Grant raved about the pick. Frazier had a loose, whippy swing with tremendous raw power. He could drive balls to all fields, but what stood out most was the bat speed. It's a special swing, one you don't see very often in a high school player, Grant told reporters. The Indians gave him $3.5 million to sign instead of going to Georgia. Over the next 4 seasons, he proceeded to post a near 800 OPS every single year, despite consistently being younger than his peers. By mid-2016, he was at AAA, just short of the majors. But he would never get a chance to take an at-bat for the eventual American League champions, because as the deadline neared, he would be moving on to a new squad entirely. Cleveland president Chris Antonetti knew what they were giving up when they traded who was, by then, their top overall prospect to the Yankees in 2016 as part of the deal for Andrew Miller. There was a pit in your stomach, because we were trading a really good player. GM Brian Cashman was blunt about what they'd acquired. An electric bat, Cashman told reporters. His bat speed is already legendary. A very exciting, high-energy guy that shows up for the national anthem in a dirty uniform. It really felt like the Yankees' future left fielder was less than a year away. Frazier put up solid numbers in AAA in 2017, hitting .256 with 12 homers in 74 games with a near .500 slug. Impressive numbers for a then 22-year-old. This showed enough to get him the green light to be called up for his first big league stint in July 2017, making his MLB debut against the Astros. In his first at-bat, he doubled. In his second, he launched a solo homer. First career extra base hit and first career homer in the same game? Not too shabby. After the contest, Frazier talked about what it meant. My parents are my role models, and my dad is my hero, Clint said. For me to go out there and have this kind of first game for him is really special for the whole Frazier family. The moment that seemingly signified the arrival of another Yankees superstar came a week later, that walk-off homer against Milwaukee. Here's a stat that most people don't know. In that same game, Frazier hit a triple before the walk-off homer. That made him the first Yankee with a triple and walk-off homer in the same game since Babe Ruth on August 18, 1922. In his first month, he had accomplished something not approached by a fellow pinstriper in nearly 100 years. Insane. And he wasn't done. By his 15th career game, he had 9 extra base hits. Only one other Yankee ever did that. Joltin' Joe DiMaggio. Future Rookie of the Year Aaron Judge was certainly all in on his new teammate. As a player, man, he's a total package, Judge told reporters. He's got speed, he's got power, he can play any outfield position. It's fun to watch a guy like that. On July 19th, Frazier changed his jersey number from 30 to 77. He wanted to match with Judge, who wore 99 in right field. The parallels were obvious. 2 young power hitters who could anchor the lineup for a decade, finishing neck and neck for playoff series MVP honors. But the rest of his season didn't quite go according to plan. He dealt with an oblique strain that limited him to just 12 games played from August on. In that small sample, he didn't record a single homer or RBI, batting around 150 with an OPS just over 500. He struck out 17 times and 45 ABs. Abysmal stuff. He finished his rookie year hitting .231 with 4 homers in 39 games. Not huge numbers, but after that encouraging first month, it was clear the potential was there to be an impact player at the big league level. Then, February 2018 happened, setting off a downward spiral that would change the trajectory of Frazier's entire career going forward. It was spring training, a Grapefruit League game at Bradenton, Florida. Red Thunder was tracking down a fly ball in left field and ran full speed towards the wall. It didn't matter that it was spring. I play as hard as I can, Frazier had said. I'm going to go out there and I'm not going to be afraid to run into a wall to catch a ball. I'm going to dive for a ball. I'm going to try to make a play at all times. At the last second, he looked up. Too late. His head smashed into the fence and he went down. When he got up, the world was spinning. The trainers took him out of the game. The initial diagnosis? A severe concussion. The symptoms were brutal. His depth perception was gone, and he would deal with bouts of feeling out of his body at the plate. An everyday hangover that was a constant factor. Years later, Frazier described what those days felt like. I was scared, he told reporters. There were times I'd be driving, like I was on autopilot. I'd look around and think, how did I get here? He compared it to being drugged, like somebody slipped something in my drink. That's what this type of concussion does. Your brain doesn't really process reality the same way. Here's what people don't understand about vision problems for hitters. The best hitters, generally, are the ones that have the best eyesight. You need to recognize a pitch in the first 15 feet out of the pitcher's hand, fastball or breaking ball, up or down, less than half a second to decide. When your vision is blurry and your depth perception is shot, you're guessing. And you can't guess in the MLB. You can't see spin the same way. If you can't tell it's a fastball or slider, it's already too late. Frazier had elite bat speed early on. He could crush mistakes. But when you can't recognize pitch types, you can't hunt those mistakes. You're just trying to survive. He didn't return until May 15th, nearly 3 months after the collision. 3 months of doctor visits, therapy sessions, and vision tests, waking up every day hoping this would be the day that he felt normal. It never really was. After a short rehab stint at AAA, the Yankees called him up in July and gave him 15 games. He would hit .265 with 1 homer and 43 plate appearances. The numbers looked okay on paper, but he frequently was struggling pitch to pitch. They sent him back down. The shuttle between New York and Scranton had begun. The 2019 season was more of the same, up and down between AAA and the Bronx. His defense was a disaster. He misread fly balls, took bad angles, and overall posted one of the worst fielding run values in the game at -8, despite only appearing in 69 contests. His hitting was certainly better than this, with him finishing with a .267 average, .806 OPS, and 12 homers in that limited sample. Solid enough, you would have thought, to get him at least a little run as the year went on, perhaps even seeing him get some games at first base where the team had no projected long-term answer. But the Yankees never fully committed. Brett Gardner kept getting starts in big games. So did journeyman Mike Ford. Frazier, meanwhile, stayed in limbo. Then came 2020. COVID shortened the season to 60 games. Everything was on the line. Frazier got his chance, and, for a moment, seized it. He played in 39 games and raked, hitting .267 with 8 homers, 26 RBIs, and a .905 OPS. He looked healthy and confident. The bat was alive again. The vision problems certainly seemed more manageable, as evidenced by his sky-high 15.6% walk rate, almost 10% more than the prior year. The Yankees had finally given him a real shot, and he was producing. The pinnacle was August 15th, 2020, when Frazier went off against the rival Red Sox, tallying 5 RBIs and a 10-3 Yankees win. This prompted his manager, Aaron Boone, to praise him. For the first time since his initial call-up in 2017, he looked like the future star he was once proclaimed to be. Then September came, a game against Toronto. Frazier took another shot to the head running into a wall. He played through it, kept showing up, and kept his mouth shut. Frazier was somewhat trapped. Tell the Yankees about another concussion and risk losing his roster spot, or play through it and hope his brain would heal on its own. He chose to stay quiet. Years later, Frazier admitted what he'd done. "I obviously kept certain things to myself in 2020, he told NBC Chicago. They weren't really made aware until I pulled myself from a game in 2021. Frazier entered that season, finally, as the Yankees' named starter in left field. This was supposed to be his breakthrough. Through April, he stayed above water, hitting .234 with 2 homers. Not great, but not outright horrible. Then May hit. His vision problems looked the worst that they ever had been, with him hitting .186 with just 1 dinger. He looked completely lost. He was swinging through way too many pitches, as evidenced by his sky-high 30.1% whiff and 29.8% K rates. June was even worse. He hit .161 with 1 homer. People were starting to notice something was wrong, but Frazier kept saying he was fine. On June 30th, 2021, everything came to a head. Frazier outright pulled himself out of a game, walking right up to manager Aaron Boone and saying he couldn't see right. His head hurt. He was dizzy. This was the first time he admitted something was wrong since ignoring the September 2020 concussion. 9 months of suffering in silence. 9 months of playing with a damaged brain. Sometimes you can just see in somebody, Boone told reporters after the game. He was dealing with some things, and not feeling great. That would be the final game Frazier ever would play in a Yankee uniform. He later described those months. "I was severely symptomatic with some of those past issues I was having," he said on the Short Porch podcast. "I was like, we gotta pick the pace up. I need help. I need serious effing help." He admitted to not revealing his symptoms to the Yankees prior to spring training, saying that they were unaware he was fighting for his life. The stadium lights and crowd noise could impact how he felt on a moment-to-moment basis. He was trapped, suffering in silence. Despite how things ended, Frazier described his relationship with Boone warmly. The text messages him and I would exchange to each other, the way we talked to each other, it was like we weren't just player-manager. We were like, I would say, as much friends as we were allowed to be. He had my back the entire time. On November 19th, New York designated Frazier for assignment. 4 days later, they released him outright. After 5 years, 266 games, and countless trips between New York, Scranton, and the IL, it was over. The Cubs signed him in March 2022, but he lasted just 19 games with them before being released in June, hitting just .216 in that span with underwhelming underlying numbers. Texas gave him a AAA shot 3 weeks later, but after 10 games, they cut him. His last chance would be with the White Sox in 2023. In 33 contests, he hit .197 with 2 homers, before Chicago released him in June. In 2024, the Charleston Dirty Birds of the Atlantic League signed him. Independent ball. The kind of place where careers go to die or get one last shot at resurrection. He played 44 games and hit .258 with 6 homers. Not exactly the kind of production that grabs major league attention. On July 3rd, 2024, the Dirty Birds announced Red Thunder had retired. No press release, no farewell tour, no explanation. It was simply over. 29 years old, the same age fellow former prospect phenom Bryce Harper won his second MVP. So, what led to the downfall of Clint Frazier's career? Put simply, the concussions. February 2018 started the nightmare. That fence collision gave him symptoms that never seemed to fully go away. Blurry vision, depth perception issues, an everyday hangover. The brain is certainly a unique animal, and doesn't heal like regular body parts. This isn't to absolve him of all responsibility. He certainly had his issues as a ball player. For one, he swung and missed way too much, and two, was a horrible defender. But it's hard to know if he would have been able to overcome these things with pure power production had he not been impaired. And it's also hard to root out exactly what these head blows didn't affect. For example, years later, he explained what it was like for him as a fielder. I don't know the exact day, but I started to realize in spring training that year that the biggest thing I was noticing was on defense. I would really struggle with depth perception, like really noticing where the ball was at, he said on the Baseball Isn't Boring podcast. There emerged a pattern as well with people criticizing him for diving too often, of which he said, when people were all over me for diving, I was just trying to catch the ball. I thought the ball was right here, and it was right there. He never really had a chance. Today, Frazier runs a YouTube channel and hitting instruction program where he live streams Yankee games, breaks down hitting mechanics, and talks about player development and how organizations make decisions. His career stats: a .235 average, 29 homers, 101 RBIs, and a .739 OPS in 280 games over 7 seasons. For many guys, those are impressive numbers. To even make the MLB is a feat, let alone register nearly 30 long balls. But with Clint, it's the what-ifs that kill you. What if he had never hit that fence in February 2018? What if he told somebody about the September 2020 concussion right away? What if the Yankees had taken a more active part in diagnosing his initial symptoms, a pattern that would become evident again a couple years later when Anthony Rizzo suffered for months with a head injury while they just looked on? The answer to all these questions is, I guess, we'll never really know.
From 2018 to 2022, JT Realmuto was considered the gold standard for all-around glove work from the hardest position in the sport. In fact, he ranked among the top catchers in fielding run value, baseball's best current measure of defensive play in my opinion, year in and year out, posting 19 in 2019 and 14 in 2022. But since 2023, he's ranked near the bottom of all catchers, at -20. He's gone from a golden glove to a cardboard one. But how do we get here? And what factors caused one of MLB's most stunning defensive drop-offs ever? Jacob Tyler Realmuto grew up in Del City, Oklahoma, where baseball ran in his family. His dad, David, played college ball. His sisters, Ryan and Amanda, both caught for major college softball programs. His uncle, John Smith, the famous Oklahoma State wrestling coach with 2 Olympic gold medals. Despite the familial connection, young JT wasn't a catcher at first though. At Carl Albert High School, he was a shortstop who could absolutely rake. His senior year in 2010 was the stuff of local legend. 119 RBIs in just 42 games, setting a national high school record that still stands today. He hit .595 with 21 homers and 22 doubles. Again, in 42 games. Video game stuff. But sometimes when their starting catcher had to pitch, Realmuto would slide behind the plate. That's when Marlins scout Steve Taylor saw something different. You'll have better MLB chances as a catcher than shortstop, Taylor told him. Smart advice that shaped his future. The Marlins drafted him in the 3rd round and signed him for $700,000. That convinced him to skip his promise to Oklahoma State. Not bad for a kid who started catching part-time because his team needed someone behind the dish. The minor leagues weren't kind to Realmuto at first. In 2010 with the Gulf Coast League Marlins, he hit .175 in limited action. But scouts saw something beyond the struggles in the batter's box. Quick feet, a cannon arm, and a level of baseball IQ that just couldn't be taught. By 2012 at Jupiter, Realmuto was throwing out 42% of would-be base stealers and giving up just 3 passed balls all season. His offense was progressing steadily as well, though not at nearly the same pace, with him posting OPSs around 700 year over year. It would be his 2014 breakout at Jacksonville that truly changed everything. A .299 average with 62 RBIs and his typical fantastic defense got him Marlins Minor League Player of the Year honors. Baseball America ranked him as the 10th best prospect in their system, and called him the best defensive catcher. The kid from Oklahoma was nearly ready for the show. JT's MLB debut would come on June 5th, 2014. He was called up when Jared Saltalamacchia got hurt, and in his first game went 3 for 5 with 3 RBIs in an 11-6 win over Tampa Bay. His first career hit was a 2-run single, perfect for a player who'd end up making clutch hitting a habit. But it was 2015 when Realmuto really made his name known in the major league sphere. After Jared got cut in April, the starting job was his.
He set Marlins rookie records with 114 hits and 7 triples. That was the most by a first-year catcher since 1972. Oh, and he hit an inside-the-park homer too, because why not? The defensive base was also building with the hitting numbers. His 2018 All-Star season officially sealed the deal. Even though he missed some time with a back injury, the former shortstop hit .277 with 21 homers, and became the only Marlin picked for the All-Star game. He earned his first Silver Slugger award and team MVP honors. His glove work also yielded 2 fielding runs in the first year that they actually started measuring stuff like that. Solidly above average. The Marlins had developed a real budding superstar, and like is typical in Miami, they'd trade him away before paying him, all the way to Philadelphia. When the Phillies traded for Realmuto in February 2019, they weren't just getting a player, they were getting one of the fundamental missing pieces for their championship hopes. Since Carlos Ruiz's last good year in 2014, they hadn't had a consistently good and healthy backstop for a full season. Boy, did Realmuto deliver both of these things instantaneously. His 2019 season was a clinic in all-around excellence. He led all MLB catchers with 83 RBIs, 90 runs, 144 hits, and 36 doubles. But while all this was impressive, it was the defense that really turned heads. Working with coach Craig Driver, Realmuto became one of the best pitch framers in baseball, putting up +5 framing runs. This helped complement 2 other key areas in which he excelled, his blocking and throwing, tallying 4 and 10 runs in these capacities respectively. Together, all this added up to 19 FRV, 5th best in all of MLB. He was certifiably elite, and by many's evaluation, the best overall defensive backstop. The hardware started piling up. Gold Glove, Silver Slugger, all MLB first team. He caught more innings than any other catcher in baseball while throwing out 37 runners, the most for a Philly since Darren Daulton in 1993. It was a magical year in pretty much every regard. The shortened 2020 season showed Realmuto at his absolute best. He hit 8 homers in his first 14 games, the best start by a catcher since Gabby Hartnett in 1925, and overall had his career high in OPS at 840. For whatever that's worth given the fact it was a partial season. His defensive numbers slipped a bit, with him only being on track for about 7 FRV over a full campaign, but it was still nothing to scoff at, keeping him well in the upper half of the league. Then came 2021, which was preceded by a record-breaking contract. 5 years, $115.5 million, the largest ever given to a catcher. The pressure was huge, but Realmuto seemed to embrace it. In fact, he played so well he ended up starting the All-Star game, and became the first Philly since Mike Schmidt in 1981 to homer in the Midsummer Classic, all contributing to another near 800 OPS season. Further, his glove work stayed consistent in the same range as before at 8 FRV. But 2022? That was pure magic. Realmuto did something only one catcher before him had ever done. A 20 home run, 20 stolen base campaign. Ivan Rodriguez did it in 1999, over 20 years ago at that point, and at the peak of the steroid era, which some people theorized Pudge may have been in on. He was actually so good on the bases, he went 21 for 21 in stolen base tries as well, finishing with a perfect success rate. He even had a 130 OPS plus, a career high, and won a Silver Slugger as a result. His postseason was equally as notable, with his inside-the-park home run against Atlanta in the NLDS making him the first catcher ever to do that in October. Then came World Series Game 1, and a go-ahead homer in the 10th inning that nearly propelled the Phillies to their first championship since 2008, before they eventually crumbled to the Astros. But it was his defense that really mattered in those October games. Against the Braves in Game 4 of the NLDS, Realmuto threw out 2 would-be base stealers and framed 3 borderline strikes in big situations. His game calling helped the Phillies pitchers attack the strike zone with trust. This would again be near his peak when it came to his glove work overall, especially in the advanced regard, as he had posted another 14 fielding runs, his second best total ever, again, being elite in every metric possible. Another Gold Glove and all MLB first team were no surprise as a result. In fact, he actually finished a career-high 7th in MVP voting as well. At 31 years old, JT was the clear-cut best catcher in baseball. Sure, he was likely to see a moderate decline over the next few seasons, but there was seemingly no reason to expect him to be anything less than average at worst over the next half-decade. Then, at least defensively, it all fell apart. The first crack in the base came after 2022, though nobody seemed to really realize it at the time. You see, back in 2019, the aforementioned Craig Driver, the catching coach who'd first helped Realmuto become a top pitch framer, left for the Cubs. Driver's approach had been all about the details. He taught Realmuto how to set up slightly outside the zone and smoothly pull borderline pitches back over the plate. The timing of his glove movement, the angle of his wrist, even how quietly he received the ball. He fine-tuned every aspect. Most importantly, he showed Realmuto how to frame without making it too obvious to umpires. It was an art form to be included in the tasks of a catcher. The Phillies promoted Bob Stumpo to fill the gap, and for a time it worked. In fact, he even tied his career high in framing runs in 2021 at 5 with that 2019 season. It seemed as if Stumpo reinforced everything JT had learned before perfectly. Where 2022 comes in is that when Stumpo took a promotion to become the catching coordinator and player development, the Phillies didn't replace him with a dedicated catching coach on their major league staff, instead opting for more bullpen catchers. Good baseball people, sure, but not specialists in the art of receiving. The effect wasn't obvious right away. Realmuto's 2022 season was great on the surface, but astute ball knowers did notice his framing numbers had started to slip. The progression was notable. 5 framing runs in 2021, down to +2 in 2022, his lowest total in a full season since 2018. Then, 2023 happened, and the bottom fell out completely. Here's how bad things got. By season's end, Realmuto's framing had crashed to -14 runs, making him the second worst in that regard in all of baseball, behind just Martin Maldonado. But here's the weird part. It wasn't an overall decline. Everything else in his toolbox stayed great. He posted an above-average 1 throwing run, the same total he had in 2021. He even had 3 blocking runs, tied for his second most ever, and he caught a career-high 1,142 innings, more than any catcher that year. It really only was his framing that had a huge, noticeable hole in it. A deep Fangraphs analysis attempted to solve the mystery as to why. Their article, which used their own framing run statistic, which is a little bit separate from Savant's, showed that Realmuto's performance in this regard went from plus 18.8 Fangraphs runs over those 3 years to negative 12.2 in one season. This alone verified it wasn't the measuring stick. And they also verified that his pop time was still in the 100th percentile, and his blocking was decent. The best guess that they postulated was the aforementioned coaching changes. The first time this had been suggested publicly, that losing Craig Driver and Bob Stumpo had left a huge hole in his maintenance and further development that hadn't been filled afterwards. As if seeing his framing ability erode wasn't enough, 2024 brought new challenges in the health department. In May, during a rainy game against the Giants, Realmuto tweaked his knee while legging out a triple. For about a month, he played through the pain. This was classic Realmuto. The guy had built his reputation on toughness and durability and wasn't about to let a sore knee slow him down. But by June, it was clear something had to give, as his movements had got increasingly more strained as the season continued. On June 12, 2024, Realmuto underwent surgery to repair a torn meniscus. The timing was important. The Phillies wanted him back by the All-Star break, so every day mattered. President of Ops Dave Dombrowski had to actually personally convince him to have the surgery done. So strong was his urge to keep playing. When I talked to him myself, I said, "JT, it looks like we'll have to get this," Dombrowski recalled. He said, "Yeah, Dave, we can do it anytime you want, but I'm all right to play." And I said, "No, I think it's time we get this thing done." The surgery kept JT out for 39 days, his longest injury absence since becoming a regular. When he returned on July 20th, something was different, a little more stiff behind the plate. Thus, arguably the most athletic thing a catcher has to do, block errant pitches, suffered as well, with him then finishing with negative runs in this regard for both 2024 and the ensuing 2025 season, the first time he had ever done so. That, coupled with a still poor framing game, led to him putting up cumulatively negative 10 catching runs over those campaigns overall, a number tied for 6th worst in the sport, behind guys like Salvador Perez and Yainer Diaz. He had went, seemingly overnight in 2023, from arguably the best defensive catcher in baseball to one of the absolute worst. Truly insane. And it's undoubtable the injury didn't help. But what makes Realmuto's story interesting isn't just the decline, it's how he's handled it. While his defensive numbers have cratered, his leadership and character have remained constant. JT is tough, man. He's the backbone of our team, Nick Castellanos said during the 2024 season. Bryce Harper echoed the sentiment. His work ethic sets the standard for everyone. Even backup catcher Garrett Stubbs, who's watched Realmuto up close, was amazed by his approach. JT has completely changed how I approach both the physical and mental aspects of catching, Stubbs said in 2023. You'd be hard-pressed to find a more beloved player on the Phillies roster than this veteran, and that's worth enough to offset some of his degrading metrics alone for the time being. Facing the reality of his defensive decline, Realmuto has also shown ample willingness to change. When manager Rob Thompson suggested he might try left field during spring training to manage his workload, Realmuto's response was perfect. If he wants me to go out there and stand on my head, I'll try to do that. The Phillies were looking at creative ways to keep his bat in the lineup while reducing his catching load. More designated hitter appearances, games at first base sometimes. The goal was extending his career while accepting that catching 130 games a year might not be possible anymore, especially if he wants to reclaim some measure of his prior analytical performance. I don't think there's a perfect answer because I don't know what the best thing to do is, Realmuto admitted while discussing workload management. I think you gotta go off of how you feel. I like this story. I've been pretty much healthy my whole career. Exiting 2025, Realmuto faces his biggest off-field challenge yet, the negotiating of a new deal with Philadelphia, or potentially somewhere else. This is where the story laid out in today's video gets quite interesting. What will a new contract look like now that he's become, quite shockingly, a bat-first backstop? What's that going to be worth relative to his previous MLB high for catchers at $23.1 million a year? In closing, what makes JT's defensive freefall so crazy isn't that it's unique. Every player eventually loses their edge, and catchers especially so. No, it's how fast and complete the fall was, from top of the league defensive numbers in 2022 to downright horrible in 2023. Just 1 year difference, and then sustained subpar play since, when he hadn't been below average a single year prior. The coaching changes clearly played a huge role. Craig Driver's leaving after 2019 took away an important support system. Then Bob Stumple's promotion before 2022 left the Phillies without a replacement. The team's lack of focus on special catching seemingly created a perfect storm for a defensive disaster in a very specific yet seemingly consequential way. Age and wear probably deserve some blame too. Realmuto has caught over 9,000 innings since 2015. That's more than any catcher in baseball during that span, and by a decent margin. The physical beating from that workload, combined with getting older, means his athleticism, which always masks decline, is only going to degrade faster and faster. Looking back, his career breaks into 3 distinct phases, each with its own challenges and triumphs. First came his development years from 2014 to 2018, a young player learning his craft in Miami, building his hitting skills while developing defensive basics, the base for everything that would follow. Then the peak years from 2019 through 2022, top performance on both sides of the ball, impressive Silver Slugger hitting seasons combined with Gold Glove top-of-the-league defense, the peak of complete analytical catching greatness. And now, the most recent years from 2023 to the present, a veteran player facing surprising defensive challenges while trying to remain valuable through his hitting, leadership, and willingness to play different positions. Regardless of whether he ever gets back to even average overall play with the glove, he still is going to be a positive presence for as long as he dons the tool of ignorance, and dare I say it, I still think there might be more in the tank for the righty if he happens to land with the right team who can make a couple tweaks to help him get back to what was once a major source of strength.
There are few things better in the game of baseball than a true phenom. There's nothing like that first glimpse of a player who possesses a tool unlike few others we've seen before. A tool like Aroldis Chapman's fastball, or Aaron Judge's raw power, or Clayton Kershaw's hypnotic curve, or Shohei Ohtani's, well, just Shohei Ohtani really. When the baseball world first caught a glimpse of Billy Hamilton more than a decade ago, we couldn't really believe our eyes. He had one of those tools. This guy wasn't just fast, he was a flash on the base paths. With a sprint speed of over 30 feet per second and a gift for base stealing not seen since Vince Coleman or Rickey Henderson, Hamilton had fans gawking and catchers pulling their hair out. First, Hamilton set the all-time professional record for steals in a season when he stole 155 bases in the minors in 2012. Then he set the Reds' rookie record for stolen bases with 56 in his first full big league season. He was also flashing the leather in his early days, winning 3 Gold Glove awards and racking up as many as 18 defensive runs saved in a single season. Billy Hamilton was a true phenom, and then he wasn't. Today, Hamilton's not challenging Rickey Henderson for the stolen base record. No, instead, he can barely get a job as a fourth outfielder and is constantly shuttling back and forth between the majors and the minors. So what happened to Billy Hamilton? And what's going to be next for the 32-year-old?
How about Billy? Here he comes into second, and he's in there. That's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Baseball history was made in Pensacola, Florida in August of 2012. That day, a skinny shortstop for the Blue Wahoos broke Vince Coleman's minor league record of 145 bases swiped in a season. But the legend of Billy Hamilton's speed had already started to take shape well before that. After being a 3-sport standout in high school in Mississippi, Hamilton was drafted in the second round of the 2009 MLB draft by the Cincinnati Reds. At the time, Baseball America said that, quote, Hamilton's speed is one of the easiest 80 grades a scout will ever hand out. To sign with the Reds, Hamilton turned down a chance to play wide receiver at Mississippi State. In an alternate universe, perhaps, he'd been catching touchdown passes thrown by future Bulldog quarterback Dak Prescott instead of legging out hustle doubles. From day one of his pro career, Hamilton wreaked havoc on the base paths. In his first full minor league season in 2011, he stole 103 bases in 135 games, becoming the first player to steal 100-plus bases in over a decade. Then came the record-setting 2012 campaign in AA Pensacola, where Hamilton stole his mind-blowing 146th base to break Coleman's record in just his 120th game of the season. He would end that year with 155 steals in 132 games. He also posted a .410 on-base percentage, giving both Reds fans and scouts hope he could reach base often enough to actually get to use those wheels. Hamilton appeared in back-to-back Futures games in 2012 and 2013, and ranked as high as number 11 overall on MLB.com's top prospect list. This was rare for a wiry, somewhat punchless hitter, but Billy's speed spoke for itself. He was running early, often, and with abandon, and nobody seemed to be able to stop him. At the end of the 2013 season, he earned a cup of coffee in Cincinnati and did not disappoint. He stole 13 bases in 13 games on just 14 attempts.
base. The switch-hitting leadoff hitter had already started to make the transition from shortstop to center field in the minors, but it was when he arrived in Cincy that he really was plugged in there to stay. His wheels were just too good to relegate to the infield. He looked like a once-in-a-generation talent, truly. Sports writers were calling him the next Ricky Henderson, or at least the next Juan Pierre. After his smoking hot cup of coffee in 2013, Hamilton took over the leadoff spot and full-time duty in center field for the Reds in 2014. When he got on base, he was an absolute terror, stealing 56 bases and finishing runner-up in the 2014 NL Rookie of the Year race. Opposing teams would pitch out. It didn't matter. Hamilton swiped as many as 5 bases in a single game. He scored from second on passed balls. Sure, he got thrown out a fair bit, 29% of the time that season, but overall, he was humiliating pitchers and catchers alike often enough to offset a few caught stealings. Aside from this small issue, however, there were other lumps in his game from the very start. You see, Hamilton's inability to reach base that year rendered his speed irrelevant at times. Not only did he strike out 117 times, a 19.2% clip, but he also established a disturbing aspect of his game that would only get worse as the years wore on, a tendency for hitting the ball in the air, where his legs couldn't save him from a fielder's glove. His ground ball rate that year was just 37.3%, and when your hard hit rate is under 12, you don't find many of your knocks plugging gaps or sailing over outfielders' heads. Or even infielders' heads, frankly. This impotence led to just a 5.6% walk rate and a 292 OBP. Still, at just 23 years old, most of the Reds organization firmly believed in him. And why wouldn't they? A young hitter struggling a bit in his first season? That's nothing new. And he still had demonstrated considerable skills, including an above-average glove. Remember how 2014 was his first full season in center? Well, you wouldn't have been able to tell by watching him, as he managed a 14 DRS. So, despite his lack of on-base production, Cincinnati continued to put Hamilton at the top of its lineup card. But what would the future bring? Would he start hitting the ball on the ground more? Would he start utilizing the bunt perhaps more often? Would his overall bat-on-ball skills improve? Well, in 2015, Hamilton did improve overall, most specifically at his core strength, base running. After being caught 23 times the previous year, he stole 57 bases with a success rate of 88%. He stole third base 16 times without being caught. He was only picked off once, and he was never thrown out while taking an extra base. He had established himself as one of the truly elite base runners in the modern game, as was his destiny all along. However, at the plate, where it really mattered for him, nothing really changed. He didn't progress, showing no real notable improvement in any of his glaring weaknesses. He was actually worse in the box in 2015 than he was in 2014, notching just a 274 OBP to go along with a 55 OPS+. This made him almost half as valuable as an average big league hitter. He did walk a bit more at 6.2% and struck out a bit less at 16.5%, but he also hit just 264 on balls in play, again registering one of the worst hard-hit ball marks in the entire league. Most glaringly, however, might have been the stagnation of his ball in the air issue, which kept his ground ball rate at a still unimpressive 38%. Here's a good comp for comparison. Juan Pierre, the aforementioned speed demon with a 295 career average and over 600 steals, had a ground ball percentage of over 50 in his career. And so, just as Hamilton, the Broadway play, was becoming a cultural phenomenon across the world in 2015, baseball's Hamilton was sinking into the background. The return of Ricky Henderson narrative was seemingly dying out, day by day. Things did get a little better for Hamilton in 2016. He managed an OBP of 321, nearly 50 points higher than the previous year, helping him to establish his career high for stolen bases with 58 bags and 66 attempts. He also posted career highs in both WAR at 3.1 and DRS at 18. His average had even come up to a respectable 260, and his 77 OPS+ wasn't utterly unplayable as it had been the previous year. But he now had 3 big league seasons under his belt, and so far hadn't had that breakout campaign people were dreaming of. At 25 years old, when most players were entering their prime, Hamilton was in dire need of a big step forward. Unfortunately, things only got worse. In 2017 and again in 2018, Hamilton's OBP came in under 300. He kept hitting balls too softly and rarely on the ground. His soft hit percentage, which had been around 21 to 22% from 2014 to 2016, increased up to 25, then 36% the next 2 years. His ground ball rate, still hovering around 40. Yes, he stole another 93 bases those 2 years and saved another 20 runs in the field. But make no mistake, his stock was drastically falling. The bottom line, Hamilton still wasn't getting on base enough to make his speed the game-changing asset it could be, and folks were now starting to question whether Hamilton was a lost cause, not only as a star, mind you, but as an everyday player. A two-tool athlete who can only steal bases and chase down fly balls aren't very valuable in today's modern game, after all. After the 2018 season, the Kansas City Royals took a chance on the 28-year-old, hoping he could patrol the spacious outfield at Kauffman Stadium with his glove and take advantage of its gaps with his bat. Maybe a few of those softly hit fly balls and line drives would start falling in for him. Perhaps, maybe, he could find some way to fix his approach overall.
This didn't happen, unfortunately. Hamilton's on-base percentage just kept on falling, all the way down to 289, along with his OPS+, now at a stomach-churning mark of exactly 50. Correspondingly, his stolen base totals dropped as well, to just 22. Not only was he more impotent at the plate than ever, but it seemed he had lost a bit of a step on the bases. His once 80 grade speed was probably sitting more in the 65 to 70 range now. All this ended up knocking Hamilton out of the starting lineup. His ground ball rate additionally sat at 36%, and his BABIP at just 299, a death sentence for a hitter that also sported a K rate of nearly 25. Unfortunately, from here, these trends continued, and he fell further and further, right out of the big leagues at times. He started to pinball around the league, looking for a new home and a new lease on his career at each junction. From KC, Hamilton joined the Braves, then the Mets, then the Cubs, then the crosstown White Sox. The Mariners tried him, so did the Marlins, then the Twins, and finally, he ended up back to the White Sox, where he is today, when he's not in AAA Charlotte. By 2021, Hamilton had given up on switch hitting, electing to bat right-handed exclusively, something he had wanted to do for years. However, it didn't seem to really help. His OBP has been under 200 since that change. Hamilton has gone from a phenom to a quadruple A player, a talent who once seemed invincible, but never really panned out. Phenoms are built on their eye-catching skills after all, and once they prove the lofty expectations we levied on them were too high, they start to fade away, and fall, sometimes so far as back to the Bush Leagues. Who can forget southpaw flamethrower Steve Dalkowski, who had one of the hardest fastballs in baseball history but could never throw enough strikes? Or Mark Fidrich, a bird who flew as high as a rookie can before injuries and inconsistencies sent him crashing back down to earth. Remember Cleveland Indians outfielder Joe Charbonneau, who took the league by storm in 1980, opening beer bottles with his eye sockets, hitting 23 home runs, and winning the AL Rookie of the Year award? He even had a hit song named after him. Not ringing a bell? Maybe that's because his illustrious career spanned all of 3 seasons. As Hobbs' father tells young Roy in The Natural, "You've got a gift, Roy, but it's not enough. You've got to develop yourself." By the way, Joe Charbonneau was actually one of the only real-life ball players in The Natural. That's the only playing gig he could get by 1984. But back to Billy. Hamilton may have lost his phenom card, but I'll say one thing for him. Watching Billy play has never been boring, and even if he has lost a step, he is still a valuable base runner in a league where base stealing is starting to matter more than it has in a long time, thanks to recent rule changes. So what's to become of Hamilton? Hard as it is to believe, he's still just 32 years old. He still has 91st percentile speed. Despite his struggles and lack of playing time in recent seasons, he still has more than 300 career stolen bases. He's saved over 70 defensive runs in the field, and is 16th among active players in outs above average at 59, despite playing less games than pretty much all of the other players in front of him. In short, Hamilton is now a role player who can help a team win games in small ways, and that's okay. Even if his career didn't turn out the way he or we expected, he still has a chance to be a valuable asset to a number of MLB teams. And hey, who knows? Maybe one of these years something will click and he'll start hammering the ball into the ground or bunting effectively more often. Only time will tell. But again, I do want to reiterate, this story isn't a tragedy. After all, he's managed to play at the highest level for parts of 11 years and make $15 million along the way. That's a pretty big success overall, if I do say so myself. Thanks for watching the video, leave a like if you enjoyed, and click on this playlist for more essay content just like this. Have a great day, everyone.
Billy Hamilton, my man.
September 21st, 2022. Yankee Stadium. O'Neill Cruz gets a FaceTime call from Paul O'Neill, the same Paul O'Neill his father named him after, a 5-time World Series champion, 5-time All-Star, and batting champion. Paul holds up a signed jersey. 2 years later, the former Yankee would say, "Obviously, Cruz has a bright future." That was 2024, a season that was supposed to house his big breakout campaign. But this would never come, with a solid yet somewhat unspectacular season existing in its place. Then, in 2025, Cruz officially morphed from an impending superstar to one of baseball's biggest question marks, as well as one of its most confusing ones. He still hit the ball harder than anyone in the sport and was tied for the National League lead in stolen bases, yet he barely eclipsed the Mendoza line and had a worse slugging percentage than Luis Arias. Seriously, look it up. So, how did we get here? Confused, but still captivated by the polarizing play of one of MLB's most talented players ever, who just can't seem to put it all together. Rafael Cruz played minor league ball in the Texas Rangers organization back in the mid-1980s. He never made it past low A, but he knew the game, and he idolized the aforementioned Paul O'Neill, the competitor who'd smash water coolers after strikeouts and crush 21 homers in the same season he hit .359. O'Neill found out about the naming years later. "I actually thought that someone was joking, because it's not something that happens," he said. He'd heard of pets named after him, but never a kid. Cruz started playing at age 6 in Dominican baseball academies. His father pushed him, and the kid certainly had some physical tools. Already coming in at 6'6" as a teenager.
Nobody had seen somebody who was slated to play shortstop that tall, but he had soft hands, a cannon for an arm, and elite speed. Scouts noticed. In July 2015, the Dodgers signed him for $950,000. 2 years later, at the 2017 trade deadline, they swapped him and Angel Herman to Pittsburgh for reliever Tony Watson, a year after swapping Yordan Alvarez for Josh Fields. With all the great moves LA has made over the years, neither of these could be considered among them. For young O'Neill, it was a chance to develop with an organization that had notable prospect talent, like Tyler Glasnow, Austin Meadows, and Josh Bell. The future seemed bright in the Steel City. In 2018, he made the South Atlantic All-Star team. The next year, he hit .298 across 3 levels, even with a fractured foot. The tools were becoming increasingly obvious, but still, the swing and miss issues were concerning. Then, he was robbed of a full year of development. COVID shut down 2020 for him, just like everyone else. He would spend that entire season at an alternate site, nothing at all like playing at the high levels of the minor leagues. But still, when organized baseball returned in 2021, something seemed to click. He destroyed Double-A, hitting .292 with 12 homers and 18 stolen bases in just 63 games. Everywhere he went, people seemed to say, "I've never seen that combination of power and speed in a guy his size, let alone as a shortstop." This level of success and intrigue finally prompted the Pirates, on September 20th, 2021, to promote him to AAA Indianapolis. What happened next became the stuff of legend among prospect watchers. He homered in 5 of his first 6 games. He got 11 hits and 21 at-bats, with 8 walks. His OPS neared 2,000. Pittsburgh had officially seen enough. His MLB debut came on October 2nd, 2021. In his first big league game against the Reds, he went 2 for 5. But even this impressive stat line didn't tell the full story. Cruz had actually recorded an exit velocity of 118.2 miles per hour in that game as well. This was the hardest hit ball by any player making their MLB debut in the entire StatCast era. The next day, October 3rd, Cruz hit his first career homer. And at 6'7", he became the tallest shortstop ever to start a game in Major League history. Teammate Ke'Bryan Hayes watched it all. "He's a unicorn," Hayes said. "He's 6'7", hitting balls 600 feet. He has a cannon. I'm just excited he's getting this opportunity." But 2021 was just those 2 games. A cameo. The real Cruz era was set to get underway in 2022. After struggling a bit to begin that season with Indianapolis, he would officially be called up to stay on June 20th, 2022. That night against the Cubs, he tallied 2 hits and 4 RBIs in a 12-1 win, with him making the hardest throw by an infielder that season and reaching over 30 feet per second on an attempted triple. He really did look like he belonged. Over the next 3 months, this impression faded a bit. From June through August, he would register an OPS under 700, with 87 Ks in just 58 games. He did have 11 homers, but his average hovered right around 200. And he had his fair share of issues at short, even if he continued to set records there with his arm, like on July 14th, when he made the hardest throw ever recorded by an infielder at the time, with a 97.9 mile-per-hour dart against the Marlins. Then came August 24th, 2022. Pittsburgh was playing the Braves at PNC Park. O'Neill stepped up to the plate against Kyle Wright, who flipped a 91 mile-per-hour cutter middle-low, where it was completely atomized. The ball flew 366 feet off the right field wall, but distance wasn't what mattered. The exit velocity was 122.4 miles an hour. That's not a typo. 122.4. The hardest hit ball in the entire StatCast era, breaking Giancarlo Stanton's previous record of 122.2. It was hit so hard, O'Neill couldn't even get to second on it. From here, things picked up a bit for the hulking middle infielder. He hit .288 in September with 6 homers, albeit with 39 strikeouts. Still, this run largely saved his season's final stats, which saw him, on the year, hit .233 with 17 homers and 54 RBIs in 87 games. Those were full season pace totals of 30 dingers and 100 runs batted in. Yeah, he punched out 114 times, but he was young, and really just had to make incremental improvements. Pittsburgh seemingly had their franchise shortstop. Their newest rebuild finally had a face. Then he encountered his first major challenge. On April 9th, 2023, the Pirates were hosting the White Sox at PNC Park. In the bottom of the 6th inning, Ke'Bryan Hayes hit a weak grounder to third. Cruz, then on the base, took off trying to score. The throw beat him, and White Sox catcher Sebi Zavala blocked the plate. O'Neill slid late, causing his leg to bend awkwardly beneath him as he collided with Zavala's legs. He was on the ground, writhing in pain. And then Zavala started yelling at him. At Cruz, who was on the ground, still hurt. Pirates first baseman Carlos Santana saw this and lost it. He charged to the backstop, prompting both benches to empty. Teammates surrounded O'Neill, who was still on the ground. The whole scene looked ugly. Cruz wasn't trying to hit Zavala on purpose, Santana said after the game. It was a quick play. Everything was fast. I don't like how Zavala screamed at Cruz when he got hurt. For me, I had to support my teammate. Pirates infielder Rodolfo Castro, speaking through the team's interpreter, was a bit more emotional. "It hurts a lot because he's like my brother," Castro said. "It hurts the team too. We all feel the pain." The diagnosis came quickly, a fractured left fibula, requiring surgery that night at Allegheny General Hospital. The initial timeline was set at 4 to 6 months. This, unfortunately, turned into the entire season. He played just 9 games in total in 2023. What was supposed to be his breakout season turned into a lost year. Cruz came back in 2024 looking healthy and motivated. This was it, his breakout. And in a way, it was. He hit 21 homers, stole 22 bases, and batted .259 with 76 RBIs and a .773 OPS in 146 games. Not MVP stuff by any means, but solid production. Something to build on. His max exit velocity came in at 121.5 miles per hour, the highest in all of baseball that year, and his hard hit percent, average exit velo, and barrel percent all ranked in the 97th percentile or above. The defense at shortstop, however, was an unmitigated disaster. He made 24 errors in 112 games. This was the second most in baseball before the Pirates moved him off the position. He had -3 outs above average as well, giving him -12 through his first season and a half at the big league level. It just wasn't working. So, on August 26, 2024, the Pirates did something about it. Manager Derek Shelton announced Cruz was moving to center field. Permanently. "It's something we've been talking about," Shelton said. "It's not something we took lightly. He's an unbelievable athlete." Cruz made his center field debut on August 28th against the Cubs. 2 days of pregame workouts, and then boom, he was the center fielder for the last month of the season. "He looks pretty good for never having done it," teammate Brian Reynolds said. Cruz was confident early. "I haven't had anything that's been really challenging for me out there. Everything's been going really good." There were certainly some bumpy moments. On September 14th, for example, against Kansas City, Cruz dove for an Adam Frazier line drive, and missed it, allowing Frazier to get a double. Later that game, Cruz misplayed a deep fly ball from Bobby Witt Jr., giving him 2 mistakes in one game that both resulted in runs. Shelton addressed it after. "I think when we moved him out there, we said there's going to be some bumps in the road. There was no time that I saw a bad attitude with it, though. I think he's accepted that that's where he's at. He's working on it. That's what happens when you take a middle infielder and put him in center field." By season's end, the defensive metrics actually looked okay. He played 23 games out there and posted 2 outs above average. He made the hardest throw that season as well, showing that his golden arm had indeed gone nowhere. If he could just combine this improved glove with marginal development in his offensive game, he would have MVP upside. Fast forward to the beginning of 2025. Cruz enters the season as the Pirates' full-time center fielder, and the highlights keep on coming. On May 25th against the Milwaukee Brewers, he crushed a baseball 122.9 miles per hour, 432 feet into the Allegheny River, a new StatCast record, harder than his own 122.4 mile per hour shot from 2022, harder than anything Stanton or Judge or Ohtani have ever hit. I want to emphasize, again, the hardest recorded ball in baseball history. Shortly after, he threw a 105.2 mile per hour missile to get a runner at home plate versus the Mariners. Needless to say, he's the only player ever to do both of those things in a career, let alone a season. Then he got invited to the Home Run Derby and made it through the first round with some titanic shots, including registering the competition's top 6 longest dingers. Cal Raleigh knocked him out in the semis, but there was no shame there. Raleigh can absolutely mash, and ended up going on to win the entire competition. From all of this, you'd probably think his year was going pretty well, right? The long-awaited step into stardom? Not even close. By season's end, that aforementioned record-setting bomb was one of just 20 total homers Cruz had hit on the year. One less than in 2024. He also finished the season hitting exactly 200, with a slug of .378, 14 points worse than Luis Ariz. It, quite simply, was one of the most confounding seasons we've ever seen. O'Neill had the hardest swing speed in baseball, the highest average exit velo, and the highest EV50, which is a stat that tracks the top 50% of any hitter's batted balls. Yet, at the same time, he finished 181st in the big leagues in both slugging percentage and OPS, and 196th in batting average. That's right, there were almost 200 big league hitters better than him in either capacity in 2025, despite literally none hitting the ball harder. It was maddening. The defense and base running, conversely, were better than anyone could have expected. 4 fielding runs in center, 5 base running runs, and 38 stolen bases, tied for the most in the National League with Juan Soto. Somehow, seemingly overnight, he had completely inverted his player mold, though it was without significant return overall. His total value of 0.3 BWAR wasn't even among the top 300 in the sport. Then there were the attitude issues, not running out potential double plays, letting balls get past him in center field without even going after them, and generally just looking detached for long stretches of time. It even resulted in him getting pulled from a couple of games. And he did manage to make it through the year without some injury concern as well. On August 12, 2025, Joey Ortiz hit a fly ball to shallow center field, prompting Cruz to dive. Unfortunately, so did left fielder Jack Sawinski. Cruz's head hit Sawinski's knee. He stayed down, got up, finished the fourth, then played the fifth. But in the sixth, they pulled him. The next day, he hit the concussion IL. Manager Don Kelly was blunt. It's serious. When you're dealing with concussion symptoms, you have to be really careful. Cruz missed about 2 weeks. After he came back, he batted well under 200 with an OPS around 500 and just 2 home runs for the rest of the year. He never looked more lost to the dish. Here's the thing that makes Oneil Cruz, to this point, so frustrating. The tools are bonkers and obviously still there, as we just laid out. The biggest issue, however, remains the bat to ball. Cruz swings and misses entirely too much, ranking in the 3rd percentile in whiff rate and 2nd percentile in strikeout percent. Even when he does make contact, though, it's often that of an unproductive kind. His ground ball rate, for example, is 48.4% for his career, well above the MLB average of 44%. Additionally, his pulled error rate, the biggest predictor of home run frequency, sat at a weak 13.2% in 2025, 3% below league average. Basically, he's not hitting the ball enough, and when he does, it's straight into the dirt or to the opposite field. That's just not a recipe for success for many players. Cruz is still just 27. The athleticism doesn't seem to be going anywhere, at least not for a few years. But time is running out. The flaws are real and seemingly growing. The projections are optimistic. Zips thinks he hits 240 with 25 homers. Steamer says 253 with 27 bombs. Both believe the talent is too good to stay this bad. But projections like those assume some rate of growth, and that is certainly not a given.
Alright everybody, if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching, and if you did, consider checking out any of these other videos on your screen right now for other content just like this. Also, if you ever see anything you'd like to see me detail in the video, feel free to reach out to my email, basebpoet@gmail.com, and if I end up using your idea, I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Alright everybody, if you made it this far, I appreciate you watching, and if you did, consider checking out any of these other videos on your screen right now for other content just like this. Also, if you ever see anything you'd like to see me detail in the video, feel free to reach out to my email, basebpoet@gmail.com, and if I end up using your idea, I'll give you a shout out. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.